What is up with it, my fellow Melee fans? We have gathered here today to attempt to solve a whole host of issues that have come up in the Smash community recently. And with me is Tafokints, Typo, and Dan Salvato. Everybody, how are you doing?
Hi, Dr.Z.
I love you guys. I miss y'all. We should do this more often.
Oh shit, I forgot to mute my Twitch. All right, yes. I miss everybody and etc. So let's get right into it, all right? So, because we got a lot of stuff to cover and we're trying to keep this under 2 hours. So first things first. And the first thing is to talk about the mods that people have proposed to controllers and to Melee to fix some problems. So I'd like to start by kind of going through the things that has mentioned in his videos, because these are, I think it covers most of the problems that people perceive with either Melee or the game themselves. And maybe Typo or Dan, you can give us maybe a little bit more of a technical description of some of these. So why don't we start with the dashback? What's the problem with dashback and what is the proposed fix?
So, Typo, you want me to take this one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, the whole issue with dashback is when you push back on your control stick, regardless of how quickly or how hard you push it back, if your controller happens to be pulled in the middle of that travel time, such as when your stick is only halfway the full distance, then instead of dashback, you're just going to get a regular turnaround. So it's effectively a completely arbitrary and random issue with the controller where you unavoidably, a small percentage of the time, get a regular turnaround instead of dashback. So the proposed fix from a hardware perspective is you have a controller mod that detects when you move from dead zone to the halfway point, and if it detects you're in the halfway point for 1 frame, it actually skips that frame. And so moving to the second frame where your stick is in the full position, it only processes that frame. So the game sees it as 1 frame in the dead zone, second frame in the dead zone, even though your stick is halfway, and then the third frame is finally all the way over. And that makes dashback 100% consistent.
Okay. What have been some other proposed fixes to this same problem?
Aside from what I described, which is intercepting the controller inputs and giving Melee something different, which you can do within Arduino, you can also do it with a software mod because, using a memory card mod, you can also do the controller interception technique. But aside from that, you can actually, if you're looking at a software mod perspective, then you can go into the game engine and change the way that certain conditionals are met for certain inputs. And so we have what's colloquially referred to as the Magus Dashback code, which what it does is it gives the turnaround animation 1 cancelable frame into dashback. And so if you do hit the turnaround, then the following frame is just going to be canceled into dash anyway. So that has seen a fair amount of controversy because you're literally modifying the options in the game engine, but it is one proposed solution. And then another potential solution is just make turnaround a 2-frame activation window instead of a 1-frame activation window. So that's also pretty similar to the controller mod. It's just on a game engine level instead.
Okay. And is this something that manufacturing differences in controllers makes a difference on?
Typo might know that. I've heard that people have tested various controllers and they have more success with dashback on some than with others. It might have to do with like minute placement of the dead zone or, the stick sensitivity, things like that. And so I think there's going to be a small difference, but you will never achieve 100% dashback consistency on any controller.
Regardless if it's the quote-unquote perfectly manufactured controller.
That's correct, because like I said, the polling timing is completely arbitrary, so no matter how fast you push the stick, you could just get unlucky and it could be pulled while you're halfway there.
Well, the other thing with that is that the perfectly manufactured controller is not designed to be good at dashback. The only ones that are good at dashback naturally are ones that are essentially malfunctioning. Shoot.
Okay, well, while Sheridan comes back, I don't know the line of questioning he was going to go with this, so I was kind of hoping.
I guess as long as we're talking about malfunctioning controllers, that comes into play with shield drop as well, right? Because the only way that you have a controller where the shield drop area is in your gate corner is if your gate calibration is actually quite off. And so the quote perfect controller is once again pretty much a manufacturing error.
I personally, from my perspective, I don't see it necessarily as a manufacturing error. It's probably just something that they hadn't necessarily had to, think about or deal with from the manufacturing side of things. But I do think that the way that it boils down to with like dashback and with shield drops is that it's essentially an RNG element of finding controllers.
Right.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you.
I'm back. Fantastic. Okay. Great. So I want to use this particular problem as to talk about everybody's philosophies for how they approach just these controller problems in general. So what I'd like to start with is, and we're all here to just kind of discuss and argue this with one another. I don't think any of us are necessarily 100% set in our philosophies, but what I would like to articulate is that I am very much against changing the nature of the game. I think if something in Melee is hard, then it's just hard, period, and we just have to work within that. But we have to be willing to solve problems of the community that are happening outside the game. For example, if we are in a situation where a lot of top players are going on controller hunts and they have to repeatedly go on controller hunts every time their preferred controller decays and they're not entering tournaments because they don't have a good controller, that's a problem that we have to solve. And we have to find out like what are the features of the controller that are breaking down and whether we can make like a suitable change either to the game or to controllers in general that will try to solve this problem. And we have to balance that against how much we think keeping the game absolutely the same is worth. So can anybody else, Tafokints, you want to see where you diverge from me on that?
I pretty much am in line with you. Like, unless there's like a very extreme case, like I do not want to touch game code. And a lot of people ask me to clarify, like in general, I don't really like the idea of notches or control mods or anything of that sort. So if people are saying, well, I don't like mods, and what do I think about notches? I'm kind of in the same boat for all of them, but I also realize the practicality and the issues that come with the randomness. So like in extreme conditions where I'm balancing player convenience and the controller hunts with adding code to the game, that's where I kind of go like, okay, like I think that's okay.
Okay, what do you think?
So for the notches and stuff, I'm actually on the fence on that. So I can't exactly say like I'm totally against it, but I'm not definitely totally for it too. I do not like the fact that you kind of have to have all of these different like external added effects just to make the game playable in a way. So I'm actually a little bit kind of like for the memory card mod that allows you to, for the dashback and dashbacks only, I think for like the angles on the notches, I know shield drop is a big thing, but I think that there's a lot of the notching that goes for like Firefox angles and perfect wave dashing and whatnot is a little bit excessive. But at the same time, on the policing front, it's a little bit, notches are easier to police than say something like, like a mod or anything.
Just for people that may not know Yoshi, can you introduce yourself and your role in the community?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I'm one of the TOs for Shine, the head organizer. Matt's not here tonight since I think he's at a cookout. I don't know. But yeah, I organized the Shine 2017 event. So that's why I'm here and talking about this. I've done a lot of research and reading upon pretty much I'll watch all the hacks videos and also talk to Typo and a bunch of other community figures regarding the controller issue as well.
Cool. Dan and Typo, we guys got to hear mostly for like the technical expertise, but you guys are probably have more just like personal experience with the controller situation in general, because people are always coming to you and asking you about controllers and how they work. So I'd like to hear your perspective on like how big you think the controller hunt problem is, and any of your opinions, just your philosophy of approaching fixes to controller problems in general.
The issue with the controller hunt, I think it's very important to realize that the Smash 4 controllers, one that they released with the Wii U, they're not being produced anymore, and the prices are going really high for new controllers. Like it's like something like $56, I think, maybe 52 on Amazon, where it used to be 24 a year ago. So our supply of controllers is probably going to be limited very soon. And I think it's kind of irresponsible to insist that people continue to, go look through all these like hundreds and hundreds of controllers to find ones that work. So in that case, I'm absolutely for, from a personal perspective as a player, I'm definitely for a dashback code of some sort. One that is, but I would say the only kind of disclaimer for that is it would have to treat all cases fairly. So you shouldn't have one instance that takes 2 frames instead of 1, if it's at all avoidable. And then shield drops is complicated.
Shield drops is complicated. Before we move on to that, Dan, why don't we hear your opinion too?
Yeah, sure. I think that if you were to like sweep the board, take the all-inclusive approach of banning everything, including notches, for instance, then that would exacerbate the controller hunt issue, because
or not.
As we know, there are certain controllers that have like a shield drop within the corner gate, so then people are going to start looking for those.
Everybody hearing me?
Is my voice not coming through?
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, let's talk about shield drops then. So, what, if any, are the manufacturing differences in controllers that affect shield dropping?
Well, it's not necessarily just manufacturing differences, because, for instance, if you get a brand new controller these days, most of the time the left notch is going to be pretty good, and the right notch would be significantly off. But I don't know if you guys can hear. So, but
go ahead.
Okay. The thing is that the shield drop values change over time, not just with the way that the faceplate wears in, but also with the way that the stick box kind of breaks in over time. So it's impossible to really have a controller that's going to have perfect shield drops throughout its entire life. Generally speaking, if you're going to be playing it competitively, I'd say that a notch controller would last about 6 months, and you would probably be able to notch it twice, maybe 3 times before you're pretty much done with it.
Okay, so even with a perfect controller, just the amount of wear is going to change how shield drops function on that controller, and what like the range of X and Y values are viable for shield drops on that. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Tapo, why don't you tell me how you approach the shield drop issue, given your stated philosophy about these problems?
I think shield drop, honestly, like I've always said, even though I don't really like mods, that given the nature of the controller and how big of an impact shield dropping makes, whether or not you air dodge or you spot dodge or you get the shield drop, is so huge that I think it's fine that if there's a memory card mod or notches, that it's available for people to have.
Okay. Now, what about the argument that this just makes shield dropping too easy for people, and that like shield dropping is hard in Melee, and making something easier is like, why should we make something easier just for the sake of making it easier?
So to elaborate, I mean, I think in this, because for me it's either you get the shield drop or you get a spot dodge, and the fact that it's really hard to enforce notches and that controllers naturally come with it often enough, in my perception, make me find like on teetering and compromising that we can have a hex mod on it.
Okay. And then let's go, Shi, what do you think?
Shield drop is one of those tricky things. Like even without the notches, it's technically doable. Like tilting all the way, not tilting all the way down, but you know, the shield drop down, maybe like after years and years in practice, you can get that nailed. So in terms of that, like I'm not a pro player, so I can't speak on that front, like how difficult it is to shield drop down, because I've tried doing it myself. I know it's very, very hard, but I'm not completely convinced that that's something that needs a mod to perform, when there is actually, you can do shield drop straight down without any mods, given enough time and practice and careful articulation of the control stick.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to point out, sorry, yeah. I just want to point out that the tilt method shield drop is a 2-frame input window.
Okay, 2-frame window.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine too, because if you look at, you know, there's a lot of one frame link combos in other fighter games, and even in Melee itself, there's a lot of things that are 1 frame that are really, really tight. And to be honest, like even if you say it's 2 frames, actually 2 frames feels actually pretty generous.
It can work, so, like, but it takes practice.
So, like, I want to understand the experience of a player who has a controller and they're playing a lot and they're trying to shield drop, you know, over the course of the life of this controller. So, like, I think you mentioned 6 months was like the average time you'd have to replace a controller for shield drop. So, like, what happens at that 6 months? Like, is it just it changes where the shield drop is too much, or like the calibration is inconsistent, or it's just what happens at 6 months that makes it so much harder?
Just the values shift. That's pretty much it.
But if they shift in a consistent manner, like, shouldn't you be able to accommodate that? Like, if it's happening that over 6 months, you know, couldn't you argue that people would be able to accommodate that?
From my perspective,
like it's not gonna, yeah.
Actually, Dan could probably take this, but real quickly, from my perspective, I think that the most responsible way of dealing with that over time would actually be to have some sort of a memory card hack that can just interpret the notch values and assign a notch job to it in software, if it's possible to do it without any problems of freezing or anything like that, or accessibility. But Dan would probably have a more developed opinion.
So can I add to that?
Yeah.
The fundamental issue is that controllers are inconsistent and imperfect. Some will be better at shield dropping than others, and then some will be good at shield dropping for 6 months, and then they won't be as good. If people have the option to just hunt for a new controller instead of try to adapt and be less consistent, then they're obviously going to do that, and the controller hunt will continue for all of eternity.
I can't hear Dan. Can everybody else?
Okay.
Oh, okay, weird.
I'll keep going then. So if we can simplify that and just have an accessible solution that makes it consistent for people, not to make the game easier, but just to help prevent people from having to hunt for controllers, spend a bunch of money, and get frustrated when their controller becomes less accurate, and that solution is available to us, which it is, then I would be all for that solution. I think it would ultimately be really beneficial for the community.
Okay, so I mean, do you think it's too much to ask people to like learn how their controller changes over time if it's something that's like it takes 6 months? Like 6 months to me seems like a long time, and something that happens like very slowly. And
no,
I don't know, I don't understand. Like, go ahead.
The reason why it's impossible to adjust over time is that the farther the notch values are from the correct ones, the harder it will be like the harder it'll be to actually do the shield drops. Like there are some differences in the way that you grip the control stick that can sometimes affect the input. So at first it might start going off where you get spot dodges every now and then, but if you change your grip a little bit, you can make it work. But ideally, I mean, players shouldn't have to worry about that. Let's be real, And even though the shield drop notches are something that I do, it's like I think overall the community would be better for not having to worry about, oh, well, am I, doing it correctly? Because a perfectly aligned notch makes it actually very difficult to miss a shield drop if it's done right.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Okay, so what I'm concerned about is
Sorry. Yeah, you could theoretically ask players to try to adapt to that, but the point is that they're not going to want to because their skill is going to slip while they try to adapt. They're going to want to just buy a new controller with a good shield drop. That's the whole thing I would like to see prevented in the first place.
I see. So if I remember, like in Hax's first video where he explained like a proposed solution to the shield drop, it was something where like there was 3 extra values, like 3 extra Y values or something like that, that was added to like the range to make like the game register a shield drop. Is that like what would we have to do to solve this problem? Is that the only way to solve it, or is there some other way?
I can provide the full details on this. So the Arduino method that Hax mentioned, which has also at this point also been emulated on a software memory card mod, was that the values around the shield drop are very slightly widened so that if your stick is very close to the shield drop, then it snaps right to the shield drop. On top of that, what this mod does, both the Arduino and the memory card mod, is it lets you calibrate your gates so that you can push your control stick into the corner and calibrate your natural gate corners so that the shield drop will always fall into that corner. So that is one solution. And as it sounds, it is kind of janky and awkward. Even as a memory card mod, if you had it on that, then people would have to calibrate their controller every single time they plug into a new setup in order to take advantage of that, which is, in my opinion, very unnecessary overhead for tournaments. It adds an extra step. People don't know how to use it. You have to worry about which setups have it and which don't. So there is another solution, and this is when you actually start getting a little deeper into the software modification, where if you actually look at the game logic, you can have a consistent gate corner shield drop, which is the ultimate goal here, simply by thinning out the necessary, or thinning out the areas for spot dodge and roll, because the way it works right now is the spot dodge and roll both cover up the shield drop, mostly spot dodge. So if you thin out the spot dodge area, then pushing the stick into the corner will basically guarantee a shield drop every single time, and it doesn't require calibration. And this is different from, for instance, the Magus code, which actually changes the game states. The Magus code makes turn cancelable into dash. This is different because all it modifies is the stick areas itself, and so you can't do anything that wasn't previously possible before. And so that's the solution that, in my opinion, I'd ultimately like to see, but that is another solution aside from like calibrating the controller.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What would you say, because the Hax code also, although it kind of fixes issues, what would the argument be, because there's 2 routes you can take here. On one hand, you have the Magus code, but when people complain that there's an RNG element on whether or not you get 1 or 2 frames for the dashback.
Do you mean for the Magus code specifically?
The one that's in the Hax mod, if I read correctly, you either get a 1 frame or a 2 frame, right? And that's random?
Yeah, but that's actually something that's unavoidable because it's based on when your controller is pulled. You cannot avoid the arbitrary controller pulling when you're in the middle of your dash. That's always going to happen. But what the mod does is it removes the inconsistency of getting just a regular turnaround. It gives you a dash instead. The dash will take 1 frame longer. That's unavoidable no matter what. But what you're not getting is the turnaround.
Okay. That was something that other people brought up, so I just wanted to hear your thoughts and just have it out there.
Yeah. No matter what kind of mod you use, dash will always be random between 1 frame and 2 frames, depending on when your controller is pulled. Mods really can't fix that.
Okay.
I guess if you really wanted to, you could just make all dashbacks 2 frames.
Well,
Yeah,
you
you
have to fix the
theoretically could, but
Right.
I don't know if people would really want to do that.
No, but it's like it gets rid of inconsistency. But let me go back to your shield drop solution. So my concern with that is I feel like that makes shield dropping a lot easier for everybody. And the only game, it's like, I feel like there's some value in the fact that shield dropping is hard. Like, that's just kind of an accepted part of the game. Do you feel like that changes the game too much? Like, have we really explored every option there?
I think that if every controller were naturally good at shield dropping wouldn't be hard in the first place. So if we're going to do anything with shield drops as far as software is concerned, the effect is that it's absolutely going to make shield dropping a heck of a lot easier for everybody. For sure.
Yeah, but I think the goal is to have all controllers emulate the perfect controller, right? And it to me, if I've understood what you said correctly, it seems like it actually makes all controllers better than the perfect controller because there's just a wider range of X and Y values that your controller can take to be considered a shield drop. And you also have to change like some of the values of where the controller registers other states.
It's by my understanding that the perfect controller will be able to shield drop on one of the natural gate corners of the controller, but Typo can verify that if I'm wrong.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
If you have, quote, the perfect controller, will you be able to use a natural gate corner in order to shield drop?
Yeah. I mean, but the thing is that obviously perfect is a very subjective thing. And in this case, it's not just necessarily perfect as in this controller was manufactured in the perfect way or it was worn in the perfect way. It's that for like a period of time, it will be perfect. And so I feel like the software mod emulates that period of time when the shield drop notches are perfect and obviously like hypothetically the dashback is also perfect.
Right, so by giving shield drop to the gate corners, we would effectively be emulating that perfect controller.
But isn't it also like widening the area that is considered a shield drop? So like if I already have the perfect controller, the quote like for some definition of perfect controller, and I plug into a setup with this mod, it's going to be easier still for me to do shield drops. Isn't that right?
It would be easier to maintain.
If the perfect controller means pushing the stick into the gate corner guarantees a shield drop, then this mod would do that same thing.
Okay, but what I mean is like, let's say I already have the perfect controller. Will I notice any difference in the ease of shield dropping using this mod?
No. That's the hope.
Okay. Because I feel like that's like a pretty hard condition. Is like we should be seeking not to make things easier for the sake of making them easier if we can. The goal, in my mind, is to bring every controller to the same level and not like elevate them above like what existing controllers already are.
Yeah, that's why I advocate personally for the calibration fix where you have, it's the same, it's 3 values still, it's just that you change the values according to what the controller is giving. So that way the window isn't widened or anything like that, but you can still retain the ability that you would have on like a hypothetically perfectly notched controller.
Yeah, so calibration is more purist, and it's technically keeping the game more the same, but I also think that if we have the technology and expertise to do something better that achieves the same result with less hassle, then we might as well go for that. I feel like the only argument against that would simply be purism, but in my opinion, the ends justify the means.
Yeah, and there's like, it's like purism isn't like a binary thing, right? It's like there's degrees to how much you're violating purism. And I think the argument is like, what's the appropriate extent that we're willing to go to fix some problem? So I think to move beyond this discussion, what we really need to understand is if the calibration method fixes it and retains purism, I think that we should probably, at least I would agree that's acceptable. And we can have a discussion about like whether we need to go further than that.
Yeah, we should pay other. Yeah.
Yeah, and to tie that back, and like this, my same reasoning would apply to Dashback as well. So now tell me about 1.0 Cardinal Directions.
Do you mind if I take this, Dan?
Go right ahead.
I have a lot of thoughts. Okay, so it basically, the 1.0 dash fix, what it's essentially doing is you have 1.0 as a value, which is tied to a specific x and a specific y input. So let's say x is 1, y is 0. Now, the next possible value down from that is actually 0.89, 0.9875, and 0. So it's two different x inputs with different y inputs as well. So basically what it ends up boiling down to is you have a range of, I believe it is, I think it's like almost a dozen values if you total them up around this 1.0 input, where you're going to get 0.9875, which is the most common angle for like a dash or something like that, or a cardinal direction. And I think that one of the issues with the mod that a lot of people aren't necessarily very well informed about is that it's kind of like an analog to digital remap, because what you're doing is instead of like taking an arbitrary analog input and assigning that to a digital, like a button that you can just press, what you're doing is you're assigning a series or a range of potential analog values, and you're assigning that to be one single analog output. And the thing about that kind of a solution where you have one value floating out there is that even with a perfectly angled notch for guidance, like in a 1.0 dash, like according to Cardano, like you can't necessarily recreate that with a notch. Like you would have to, one, get it perfectly aligned with like the correct filing, and calibration also essentially causes it to be random every time you plug in or every time you reset, and it's really hard to be consistent overall with that. So I think that I'm not like for or against 1.0 dash, but I think it's a really big precedent that we have to think about as a community.
Mm-hmm. So, and this is not just like the gate, right? So like, even if I took the gate off, I would not be able to get 1.0 if, I could only get 0.9875 with the gate.
Right.
Okay. So do we have an idea about like how often controllers exist that can actually achieve 1.0 with like standard calibration?
We don't have a lot of data.
Okay. So I guess my thinking is that it should be like, there's the idea of like a standard like new controller. Like the average new controller, I think the consensus is that like 0.9875 is way more common than a controller that does 1.0. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So then I think it makes sense for the standard to be 0.9875. Like I think that should limit people hunting for 1.0 controllers.
Nobody's hunting for 1.0 controllers right now.
Okay. So if that's the case, then this is not a problem of there's like some external thing in the community that's like, causing problems where people have to like switch controllers every so often. But it's just a thing where like very occasionally there's controllers that have a slightly different range than other controllers. So I guess my question is like, is this a problem that needs to be fixed?
I think the reason why it needs to be addressed is because the legality of any kind of box style digital input controller is contingent on how this issue is handled, because there's a very strong precedent that will be set if we do this kind of a thing, where it's essentially a soft analog to digital remap. So if this were allowed, or if this were permitted or whatever, it would absolutely make the legalization argument for Box or for Smashbox much more realistic from their perspective.
They could easily just program their controller not to ever go to 1.0, right?
Right. It would still not necessarily.
I don't think it would really, like, if they can do that, I don't see this as affecting the legality discussion of those controllers.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that.
Okay, so I don't know, Tafokints or she, like, do you think this is a problem that needs to be fixed? Like, what happens? What's the worst that happens if we don't address this at all?
From a gameplay standpoint, there are some edge cases. The most common one is Peach Peach can combo a Fox at low percentage in a certain situation, based on whether or not they can get to 1.0. So from a gameplay standpoint, I think that's probably one of the bigger edge cases. You get like a Typo, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like a 3 to 5% faster dash as Falcon if you get the 1.0. Or is that? Or
I think it's almost closer to like 1 to 2%.
Oh, it's okay. It's 1 to 2%. Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very minimal.
So those are the two biggest scenarios that really come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if we were to, you know, it sounds like a lot of people just want to approach these mods very conservatively in general. And since the 1.0 is really kind of edge casey, it's very uncommon to see on a controller, and it doesn't make that much of a difference. I wouldn't really feel too strongly if it was like left out of preliminary mods that we saw. You know, I think like for people who are for that, they should be able to live with it as well, and just see how the community reacts to the more important stuff first.
Can I ask a question? This might be placebo, but when you get a case for 0.9875 or you get the extension to 1, does that affect normal feel and play, or is it just not noticeable?
I don't think it's necessarily noticeable, but I haven't done a lot of research. I think that overall, if you were to limit to just 0.9875, then yeah, overall you would have more consistency. Maybe not necessarily speed, but consistency. I don't think it's too much of a feel difference. As I said, I think it's just a precedent.
Yeah, that's my feeling it too. Is like making the rule on it kind of locks us into rules in the future if we discover issues like of a similar nature. And like I feel like this is something that's not big enough that we need to lock ourselves into a line of reasoning on that's going to affect what we do in the future. Like if something in the future comes up, then we can like look at the totality of all these problems and figure out what's the correct solution.
So I just want to talk about a little some of the stuff that's outside of the gameplay. I actually don't think I'm qualified to talk too much about the gameplay stuff, but on more of the event side, if we do introduce any kind of like modding fix, whether it be so memory card is something that's a little bit easier to do the enforcement of. That's something we can just give to like Gaming Gen or whoever is kind of like the console providers, is that, hey, you know, load this up on every single console and then tape up the memory card slots or whatever. But the moment you introduce like boxes and Arduino mods, it does open up a whole can of worms when there's no way to kind of like do a quick check. Like I mentioned, I think I talk about this a lot, is that prevention for this kind of stuff is nearly impossible. You're not going to check 1,000+ attendees controllers before they sit down and play every single game. And also even if you do that, like just swap out for another controller that maybe had not been checked. And that would become a big problem as well. So if and only if, you know, these controllers do get legalized, I do want to see some way to kind of like respond to it quickly. Like, let's say, for example, if two people are playing and one of them has suspicion that the other person is using a hacked or modded controller to some, you know, a more extreme extent than just the dashbacks and the shield drops that were proposed. There needs to be like a quick way without disrupting the flow of the tournament to verify that those, you know, hacks and mods have been placed inside those controllers. And that's kind of like the big main concern I see as a TO for this kind of stuff. I'm generally pretty open to innovation, and that's kind of right now I kind of like turned a blind eye almost to it in New England, like local level events, because a little bit delayed there that we can recover from. Regional events, they're okay for now, and stuff like Shine, I'm really hard pressed to fully say legalize it, because if a pool runs late, that's a huge amount of costs onto us in terms of like, with the convention centers, and also then stream gets delayed, and then, people don't get happy there. And then worst case scenario.
I do want to talk more about this, but I want to finish like the last of the issues of the memory card hack, and then we can definitely get back to this line of thing, because I think like the next thing is, once we have an idea of what we're going to do with mods in general, like how to approach them, is talking about implementing it and enforcement. So last thing is, let's talk about the larger or perfect wave dash zones.
Dan?
Yeah, tell me how those work. Tell everybody how those work.
Right now, we've pretty much only seen the controller mod implementation, which is to take some of what's normally the dead zone and swap that out for essentially what is the perfect angle, so that it widens the window for a perfect angle. It makes you less likely to accidentally perform a horizontal or vertical Firefox, for instance, or a horizontal air dodge instead of a wave dash. So that's pretty much what we're looking at right now as far as perfect angle goes. But we also want to contrast that to notches, and I think Typo can talk a little bit about the difference between that and notching the controller for perfect angles.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a complicated thing, because one of the realities of controller notching for Firefox and wave dash angles is that it's hard to do, and it's a lot harder to do a Firefox angle perfectly than it is to do, for instance, a shield drop mod. And so there's a very significant cost if you pay someone the amount that they should be paid for that kind of work. So I don't think it's something to sneeze at when you think about controller notching specifically. But I think, so the main difference that you have is, so with a wave dash notch, what's happening is you're allowing the control stick to get within a certain, like a few values of the perfect value, but you're disallowing it from going above that. Because if you allow it to get close to the dead zone, then basically what happens is, if you fly too close to the sun, as it were, you're going to get like the horizontal. So specifically, the wave dash notches or the Firefox angle notches, which are the same thing, by the way, they prevent you from getting the perfect angle, but they assist you in getting the or getting a range of good values, so very, very good values. But what happens with the current solution that's proposed with like the memory card hacks and stuff is, essentially you're taking some of that dead zone where it's horizontal, and you're replacing it with another dead zone that is the perfect value. So in a situation where normally you've got the utility is going up as you approach a certain value, and then it peaks, and then all of a sudden it goes down, and it's like really not good to get it. Now you've got a situation where you're going up slowly, and then also you have a large range where it's perfect, and then it drops. So I think it's something you have to really think about from that perspective, but it's still very complicated, because like from my perspective, even though I do Firefox notches, I would be okay hypothetically as a player if they were banned. I wouldn't have a problem with it at all.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Now in the other cases, like shield drop and all that fun stuff, those occur within a controller, or like you can RNG your way. Do you notice certain controllers, like for whatever reason in the casing, that allow it to have that perfect notch without doing case mod?
No. I mean, I'm sure there are controllers that are more reliable with their input mapping, but it's a completely different, it's like a mechanical change to the controller shell. And that's one of the reasons why I personally would be fine with banning it if that's what it came to. I don't think it's like really that harmful now, because the wave dash notches by themselves aren't necessarily that expensive or labor intensive, but it's like the full Firefox notches that just become a real chore.
I see. So, like, let me make sure I've understood you correctly. So, like, there's not really, like, manufacturing differences in controllers don't really affect this. The only thing that could affect is just like, as a controller gets really old, just like sometimes there's differences, there's inconsistencies in how they're calibrated. So like you could be, you know, two values different from the previous time you plugged it in, and that could really change like where the actual value is on the controller. Is that really the only controller-based factor that goes into this?
Yeah, that's actually what you've described is calibration. So basically, most, especially new controllers, they have what's called a loose zone. Cardano refers to it as a loose zone, where when you plug in your controller, it could be anywhere from, like on a new controller, it's usually 1 to maybe 2 values in either axis. But some controllers, just for certain luck characteristics, have a wider loose zone. And then there's also like really, really old controllers with like super wobbly sticks can also run into that kind of an issue as well. And so what ends up happening is you have a situation where the last position that a stick was in, the analog stick was in, can very slightly influence the neutral position from like when the controller is calibrated when you're reset. So there are variances that can occur. There are some steps that you can take to limit that variance by ensuring that the control stick was set in the same direction before you reset, but it's not exact. And if you look on an input display, you'll notice, like for instance, you might notice that the value flickers between 0 and 0.0125, which is the next value up. So it might not necessarily vary too much, but it could be like kind of fuzzy in between. And the other thing that's important to remember about this issue is that this is something you can't necessarily check for on a vanilla setup. You have to have an input display for the most part, I would say.
Okay, so what that really means is that the problem that's happening with this controller is a very general problem in the game, period. Like if your calibration is bad, a lot of things are going to be bad. It's going to affect a lot of different things in your gameplay, and not just like your perfect Firefox and Wavedash zones.
Yeah, it affects shield drops as well.
It affects like basically everything that requires like discriminating, you know, an X and Y value. So my response to this is like, why focus on Firefox and Wavedash zones compared to any of the other things that this problem causes? I think, to me, like the solution here is just get a new controller, and we can talk about like notches as a separate problem. But I think from my perspective, this is not something that needs to be fixed. This is it's not unreasonable. Like if your control stick is that bad, it's a very general problem with your controller. It's not like a very specific thing like with snapback or dashbacks. So it's reasonable to ask you to find a new controller, or, you know, depending on what our notch policy ends up being, to work within like the notch policy. And like focusing on the Firefox and Wavedash zones is like it's missing the whole problem with this. So I'm pretty strongly against like this, and especially like messing with dead zones in general. I think is a really it's a non-starter for me. Tafokints and Shi, I want to hear what you think.
So for me, you know, the whole justification for a lot of these initially, even for notches, was like, hey, like I have to RNG for shield drops and backdashes. You know, there's a controller lottery. I don't feel that perfect wave dashing and these perfect notches fit in that. I do believe that there is a skill in landing your perfect wave dashes, and I think for me, to be honest, it trivializes that, and I don't really believe that's like totally random as like a dashback, you know, triggering or not. So that's where like I think it's a luxury item that I think is unnecessary. And I've always had that stance that it just seems weird that on one hand we argued for shield back drops and backdashes because they're random, but this doesn't appear random enough for me to really say like, hey, let's just automate it for everybody.
There's not a lot that's random.
Right, and to clarify, to clarify, like the thing about hunting for controllers, like, is people hunt for things that, like, controllers that have rare artifacts in them, and we want to solve the problem of people hunting for controllers that have like this perfect dashback or perfect snapback thing. And it's reasonable to try to fix that problem. When your controller is such that just like the calibration is bad, period, like it doesn't make sense to fix the game around that. Like your controller is just bad, and it's not hard to find a replacement for that. Like pretty much every new controller is going to have a good calibration, whereas pretty much every new controller is not going to have the like properties of dashback and shield drops that we're trying to fix. So given that, it's not unreasonable to ask people to find new controllers when their just control stick is just busted, period.
Yeah, well, nobody's arguing to reduce or eliminate calibration, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what we're all ultimately interested in right now, just as a general consensus, is eliminate the need for controller hunting, and the elements that people are hunting for controllers for, which is dashback and shield drop, are the things that can be emulated to ultimately solve that.
Right, and you don't have to hunt for a controller that has a good control stick. Just a general good control stick that is going to calibrate consistently every time. And you don't have to worry about, is your controller degrading, like did this controller come with a lot of inconsistency in how it gets calibrated? Because like to me, that's what you've articulated, is that your controller just has inconsistency. Like as it gets older, it has problems with how, like what values, what X and Y values it's calibrated to when you plug it in, which changes like where the perfect angles are. And I think there's like, it's just not that hard to find a better controller, whereas finding a better controller for shield drop and dashback purposes is a lot harder.
Right. I think the question is whether or not we need to change the zones, like the dead zones and stuff like that, and change, you know, like I said, that curve where you have like a certain amount of risk reward, and it's all of a sudden heavily skewed towards one end. I think that's something that needs to be addressed. And I think that it's also important to remember, you know, going forward, because this is not necessarily going to be a finalized viewpoint from what I understand. We have to understand that, you know, setting a precedent of having a dead zone for the perfect angle, that allows, you know, people like on the box or the Smashbox, that allows them to have a strong legalization premise. So, and like I said, I'm not necessarily against those kinds of controllers, but it's something I think we have to keep in mind. But overall, I lean against fixing Firefox or Wavedash angles in code overall, personally.
Okay, so what I want to understand is like what the argument is for fixing them. Because like from what I've heard so far is just like controller degradation, but like there's got to be more to it than that I haven't understood yet. So what are the other arguments that have been made?
The argument is really, it's the fact that it's in the game, and the inaccuracy of the GameCube controller is what is preventing people from pushing the game to its limits. So that's like a much more kind of liberal argument, but that's what a lot of people say about it.
How is that just different, like, from it's too hard?
I think there's a difference between too hard and like impossible to get consistently.
Right. So like there's different ways that things can be hard, and like there's good ways that test skills that we care about, and there's bad ways where it's just like RNG, and it's hard because it's just hard to get good RNG. And that's like most of the time we consider that a bad kind of hard. But like the inconsistency here is pretty much entirely in the player here. So like why would somebody argue that we need to fix that?
Well, if what Typo was saying, where the calibration is a little off per controller and per every time you plug it in, then it might not necessarily just be on the player. It could be legitimately impossible to go onto a setup, and the perfect angle that you've practiced for 50 hours will just not work because it's calibrated a tiny bit differently when you plug in.
Yeah, I think I think that overall the wave dashes, from my perspective, especially with wave dashing, and maybe not necessarily with Firefox angles, but with wave dash, the skill that you're testing is your ability to pick a good angle, but not the perfect too close angle. From my perspective, and I understand that if you look at it from that perspective, then we might have to ban wave dash notches, just because it does make it significantly easier for people to get that angle, especially if you encounter jump squat, where you can just kind of buffer the input.
Yeah, I think there's sorry. Yeah, I think there is a skill in learning the area where it starts to approach inconsistency and learning to stay within the consistent area, or possibly, if for the purpose of survival, like with Firefox, taking the risk and going for the inconsistency. I think there's a skill in doing that, and that doesn't necessarily need to be tampered with. Okay.
So let's go on to the methods by which we can fix these things. So Tafokints, what do you know, we have the Arduinos, we have the memory card hacks. She has talked about that before. Like, what do you think about it?
I honestly, I mean, I would not want to do hardware side mods, but I prefer the memory card over the Arduinos, because if you open the floodgates or Arduinos, she alluded to this earlier, but you open the gates of having no regulation. Like, you can try to have sanity checks on it, but like, I feel like similar to hacks and like antivirus programs, as soon as people figure out what an antivirus measure is or an anti-regulatory check is, people who hack Arduinos can bypass that. So I think out of the lesser of two evils, I would pick the memory card hack.
Same. Definitely the memory. If one of these solutions does get implemented, memory card is the way to go. Like Tafel mentioned, a controller mod is way too hard to detect, and even like not even playing the prevention game, that's nearly impossible. Playing the response, like the reactionary game for catching controller mods, is extremely slow as well. Versus the memory card, where if someone did load, like took out their own memory card and plugged it into a system, that can be very easily identifiable, since there's so many people around that's watching. And at the same time, if we set up steps like, for example, a big house, Genesis, Shine, Gaming Generations does all the console setups for those events. If we just passed a couple of like, hey, these are the tournament ready memory cards, put them all in the system, and then tape up or put in a plugger for the memory card slots, it becomes a lot harder to do like a kind of like a game data switch if someone was truly like really wanted to maliciously get an advantage over their opponent.
Yeah, and this is, we've really even only talked about the disadvantages of Arduino, but there are many advantages of the memory card mod that we haven't even mentioned, which is one, highly accessible, super easy to copy between memory cards. It's free, it's secure, it's standardized, and locals can run them extremely easily. And locals are possibly even more interested right now than majors in experimenting with these mods, because they have, really grassroots communities who are excited to get their hands on new things. A lot of locals already use memory card mods or modded Wii's, and they would love to get their hands on things like this. So I think accessibility to locals is also a really big and important point.
Yeah, I think also an important thing is that, assuming these become standards, it allows players to come to tournaments and trust that they're going to get the same thing with every setup, and they're not going to have to hope that every single person installed the Arduino correctly and didn't put any different kind of code on it. Like, leaving that to players is a nightmare. Like, you don't want to have a rule set that encourages people to do that, even indirectly. So like, I feel like everybody's kind of on the same page about memory card versus Arduino.
Yeah. Also, let me this one. Sorry, talking over for you a little bit, Typo. I do remember in one of the clips of Leffen's stream just a few days ago, he mentioned, how can you guarantee all the setups are the same? I know this is a little tough at the local level and the regional level when a lot of these events are relying on community source setups. So I do not have a good solution on community source setups to be identical and standardized across the board. That's something that has to be worked out kind of within that local community. And there also trust towards the TOs needs to be established so that the people attending the event know that the TO is not going to be biased towards a player X and load up some code on the memory card that's supposed to be for the tournament to favor a certain player. And that's why I was talking about for events like Shine, Genesis, Big House, the bigger ones that are backed by a bigger vendor that does all this stuff. It's easier to just give them the official tournament memory card and have them load it up.
Yeah.
I think that the most important part about enforcement is positive enforcement instead of negative enforcement. You want people to be able to come forward and say, hey, I'm doing things correctly. I'm playing by the rules. And if you have widespread internal Arduino mods, it's a lot easier for the people that just decide they want to add something interesting to just do it. Whereas it takes a lot more barrier to entry to do it. The other thing is that I think a lot of people might not be aware of is when we say that we can use Arduinos to get around a lot of different security measures, that's not in a hypothetical sense. From a practical reality sense, it's actually pretty easy to, or at this time, to check whether or not someone's using one of those kind of Arduino mods, just because of the infrastructure that's out there currently. And honestly, and the issue is coming to your tournament near you, because I'm not going to mention any names, but there were people in the bracket at CEO who played with Arduino modded controllers, and the TOs actually ended up knowing about it eventually, but they hadn't necessarily made a huge sprawling rule set about it, so it was kind of but it's happening already. We have to be responsible about it.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Tafo.
Dan, just for people, I know you already know the answer, but just for the fans and everybody, let's say somebody creates a 99% identical memory card and puts it in and puts his version of the memory card in. What's the validation?
There are several ways to validate it, and that is definitely kind of an issue that you bring up.
How quick does it check?
It really depends on what kind of validation you're looking for. Right now, we're kind of relying on security through obscurity. In other words, there are so few people who understand how to put together a memory card hack and how to make it work that you couldn't really have some random person come along and make their own mod. But aside from that, if you're a good enough coder, you can have indicators on the character select screen, on the title screen, that says exactly what mod is running, and probably someone who's trying to duplicate that would have a very hard time with that same validation. If that eventually does get thwarted, then the modders could get even more secure with it, and TOs could, for instance, this is getting really crazy. I don't think it would come to this, but TOs could actually implement a button code password or something like that displays a certain value on the screen. So if that value isn't there, then you know that the setup has been tampered with. So there are ways to address it. It just hasn't really come up yet.
Okay. But do you foresee this being a concern down the road if, let's say, the prize pots got really large and the incentive to win was higher, that they enter subtle Pichu power-up codes? Stuff that not to say Peach exactly, but you know what I mean, things that you wouldn't really notice until later, but somebody told you something was wrong, then you'd notice it.
If we have a standardized memory card mod, especially in majors, it becomes way more difficult for outside players to tamper with the setups. Again, putting tapes over the slots, having other players watching, making sure a TO is called if a setup needs to be rebooted, those sorts of things. I think if the protocol is in place, then it's going to be nearly impossible for somebody to insert their own mod and cheat like that.
Okay.
So I don't think we have time to get to the rest of the items on this, but I think a lot of them are just kind of TO things. So I just want to go around and everybody give me just a couple words on each of the four proposed hacks. Apple, why don't you start?
Okay, so I'm fine with shield drop and dashback based on the RNG nature. I'm not really okay with everything else. I fundamentally believe that whatever is on a memory card hack, it should feel, you should not be able to feel a difference between playing that and playing vanilla Melee is the general feel I have for the game.
Dan, how about you?
All right. It sounds like the consensus right now is to eliminate controller hunting. That's the most important thing. And so taking the more conservative approach that most people can agree with, dashback and shield drop are definitely the big ones. And I wouldn't mind if the others are left out. I wouldn't mind if they were never included. I don't have that much of a preference on that. I'm really focused right now on eliminating controller hunting, and that's what it'll do. Arduinos are way too touchy. I would be fine banning them across the board and focusing on a standardized memory card mod. I think that's the ultimate solution.
I'm in agreement with Dan here.
I'm essentially, I'm in agreement. I think that anything that's related to the practical RNG of finding the correct controller should be, if we can eliminate it effectively without any problems, I think we should absolutely try to do it. I think that we should still give conscious thought to the other aspects of changing controllers. I think it's not something just to ignore. But for now, as far as finding a generalized community consensus, I'd put my personal support behind fixed dashback, fixed shield drops, and maybe not necessarily an official decision on wave dash notches or mods or 1.0 dash.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're all pretty close to one another. For the dashback and the shield drop, for me, it's kind of pending the implementation of it. I don't want to make them just easier to do for everybody across the board. I think they should attempt to retain like the baseline the baseline difficulty that you would get with a quote unquote good controller for those things. The 1.0 Cardinal Directions, I don't see any reason to make a ruling on, and I don't want it included in any controller or any memory card hack. And I don't see any need for the Firefox or perfect wave dash angles either. I don't know what to do about notches yet, because I feel like banning your own personal modifications to your controller is a little strict and difficult. Like I might ban like machined notches, but I don't know. I think I think once we've established the rules for the memory card mod, like we can have the discussion about notches a little bit separately.
Machine notches aren't necessarily a strong possibility because of the differences in each controller's tick box. But I understand what you're saying.
Okay. Okay, cool. So in the interest of time, I think we have to move to our next topic, which is coaching in Melee. And I think Juggleguy wants to come on for this. Can we get him on?
Yep.
Yeah, I have to.
Typo, you've been eliminated from MIOM Island.
Sick.
All right. I guess it's time to get coding.
Yeah, thanks for
All right.
talking with you guys.
Thanks a lot, guys. It was
so
great
much.
having me.
Your opinion and information is super valuable, and I hope we can talk some more about how to do this stuff.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I hope so too.
All right, where's young Jugs? All right.
Should we get it? How many people do we have for this portion? Okay. Did we want to add anybody else, or are we fine with us four?
Let's just continue. We
why
have
is
less
this
time, so why do we don't need to complicate it. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
why is this so blurry? Hold on a second.
It's your light.
All right, whatever.
All right. Juggleguy. Coaching.
No, it wasn't like this. What's up?
Coaching. Go.
I need more context. Where are we at? I've not been paying attention.
We've just started the coaching discussion, but we're just like a little short on time. So why don't you just give me like your whole philosophy on coaching and the ruling you would make?
Yeah, sure. I think so. First of all, when we say coaching, we mean mid-set coaching, correct? In between games of a set, after the set has already started. I think mid-set coaching should not be allowed. I've always had it banned at my tournaments. I think it turns the game into kind of like a 1.5 versus 1.5 with the coach, and I mean the analogy I always use is tennis. Obviously, like there's some other sports like boxing that allow coaching, whatever, but I think tennis is the most analogous sport, and there's a certain level of mental adaptation that comes with Smash that I believe you should be on as a player. You should be kind of be on an island on yourself by yourself between the start of the set and the end of the set.
Yeah, Tafokints.
I'm under the same line. I mean, I think the funny thing is you can always compare some sport to justify your view on anything in Melee. You can raise boxing. I'll raise tennis as an example where they don't do mid-set coaching.
Oh yeah, I think tennis is the better example.
Yeah, I mean, like you have tennis. I know women's tennis does have like coaching at certain events,
yeah,
but
women's tennis does allow coaching,
which is so dumb. But
it only got implemented in like 2008, I think, and the rule is like you get one coaching session per set.
And so I mean, so fundamentally,
that is so weird to me.
Yeah,
it's really strange as an aside, but I think fundamentally speaking, it's gonna really come down to like how you philosophically view the game, and like everybody can point examples, but the way I view it is I believe that like in Melee, like when both players are very good, it really does boil down to getting 2 to 3 very solid reads, and having a coach like tell you that is a huge difference maker, and I believe it's a skill that needs to be brought within the player. And I'm saying this as a coach too, like there's so many times where I can go to like a low level player and point out 3 things, and it's just so advantageous. So I think that brings me to the next point of like, how do you even enforce this? Because people that have friends that are top players are at a tremendous advantage with mid-set coaching. Like one new player in the community could have homies with like a top 10 player, and then he could just sit there. And on the flip side, like a player with nobody is like going to get shafted. I think it's unnecessary. I mean, I think you could do yeah, that's my general view on it.
What about the argument that if you allow coaching, okay. What about the argument that if you allow coaching, that you're going to elevate just the general gameplay of everybody involved? Like you're going to bring players to a higher, like realizing a higher potential if you allow coaching mid-set.
Okay, so if we really want to have the peak of Melee, why don't we tell them to also mid-match coach?
Okay, so what would you say against that?
I mean, I feel like that in a vacuum is not the statement that most people would say when they say we want to see the best that people are playing Melee. Because if that were the case, then our tournament structure would be very different. We'd probably float top players, right? Because they need to get rest. We would feed them like luxurious food and put them on it. Like we do a bunch of other things to quote unquote get the best Melee.
We're kind of have been moving in that direction, haven't we?
But are you trying to play devil's advocate, Daniel?
I mean, I think it's just like if you're fundamentally going by we'll see better Melee, then why is that allowed? And me saying like at Apex 2012 and Apex 2013, Cactar, Seabrick, and to a loose extent Leffen literally coached Armada, Hurrybox, and PPMD as they were playing the match. Like,
yeah, I'm saying it should not be allowed. What happened in those tournaments should not have been allowed.
Right, but I feel like people who would say like, I want the best Melee possible would also disagree with having mid-match coaching. So to me, that argument crumbles, and it's just a degree of subjectivity, and there's like philosophical arguments that need to be more hashed out than simply saying, I want the best Melee possible is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think you could, in principle, argue for mid-set coaching without arguing for mid-match coaching, because you could say mid-match coaching is just too much of a distraction for the other player.
Well, then I can say, why don't you separate them? Why don't you have head-to-head setups and just have the coach in their side?
I mean, you could say that, but like, I think people would see that just like it's too much of a 2 versus 2 at that point. Like, I think even the people that advocate mid-set coaching would call that a 2v2, and I think there's like it's a false equivalency to say that that's the same as mid-set coaching, don't you think?
Well, I
like,
mean,
it's a degree, like it's on the same spectrum.
Well, for people arguing, right, people who argue for coaching will say, well, fundamentally, it's a player with the controller that makes the decisions, and that's their justification for saying coaching is allowed. Yeah, but even if it's 2v2 or 1.5 versus 1.5, it's the decision of the player to make those decisions anyway. So that's how they kind of, like, that's how I could like try to rationalize it. That even if like a person's telling a person what to do mid-game, like the person with the controller is fundamentally makes the final decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I caught off for like the last minute or so. I think I have shaky internet, but
Well,
I think it still boils down to the fact that there's mental adaptation in the middle of the set, right? So I feel like the coach before the set begins is completely fair game, but after the first moment of the set, it should be all on the player to make those mental adaptations, those adjustments that are part of the skill of winning a set.
Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of boils down to what you think the valuable skills in Melee that we're testing are. Like, what do we care about? What do we care, like, what people are good at in Melee? And some people want to see just people brought to their peak performance regardless of anything else. And some people think that, like, the mental aspect of adapting in a game is literally part of the game. And so I just wanted to like get everybody's response to that idea. But you guys both know that I've been against mid-set coaching basically from the beginning. So, I think we're pretty much all in agreement there. So I just wanted to make sure that like the other side got their arguments represented. I don't know how much more is there to talk about on this? Like, Tafokints, how do you ever talk to Mango about like what you would do if you could have mid-set coaching, or do you think about like what you could have pointed out to him if you had mid-set coaching?
Dude, I wouldn't be able to tell him anything within 30 seconds. The way I coach is I can't tell him directly anything because he won't listen to me. I have to do a Socratic seminar where I ask him a series of questions, so I manipulate him into getting to the conclusion that I want him to get to. I can't do that in 30 seconds, man.
Okay, but I mean, that's just because of the way Mango is, I guess, right? Like, Crunch could probably tell Hungry Fox in 30 seconds.
I'm like Ash, and he's like Charizard in like the first season of Pokemon. Like, that's literally like our relationship. Okay. You don't watch Pokemon.
Y'all are nerds.
Can you translate that into 34-year-old, please?
Ash's Charizard is so strong and cocky that it literally doesn't listen to Ash at all.
Okay, so Mango. All right, well we'll go down that train some other time. But I don't know. Is there any aspect, any argument for mid-set coaching you guys want to like preemptively bring up and like argue against, other than what we've already talked about?
Not necessarily for it, but I think it's interesting to test out. I think a lot of the conclusions that we're drawing for mid-set coaching right now is a lot of it's like inconclusive or just not enough data to back one side or another, where it's like if it's severely affecting certain wins, or is it not affecting certain wins at all. I don't think we have enough data to kind of like draw conclusions, whether it's helping or truly not helping, like anecdotal, but like Tafo's case, he says like, if I mid-set coach Mango, it does absolutely nothing. So I'm kind of open
But
to
it's
the
player independent.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
It's
Keep going. I'm so tempted to.
Yeah.
You're on the side, like, you're more liberal in this case.
Right.
And so I kind of want you to take a firmer stance on why you would allow it.
Yeah, maybe you can explain like yours and Matt's perspective on it, because I know Matt wanted to allow it. He allowed it at Shine 2016. It's probably going to be legal at 2017, right?
Yeah, I think well, 2017 I wanted to try something new. But for 2016, yes, we did allow it. I think Bear and Matt had pushed it for it very, very hard, and if we allowed it for Smash 4, we allowed it for Melee. That was the kind of the thing for 2016. It's been more of a topic of discussion for 2017. But myself, I'm really not. I can't really take a side on that because I'm just not convinced it's helping or it's not helping at all. So what I want to see at 2017 this year, and the thing I'm actually trying to push Matt and Bear for, is kind of like leave this up to the attendees and have the people that have registered for Shine fill out a survey and say, should Midset coaching be allowed or not, for the people actually attending the event, and let them decide away in that sense, like giving the power to the people. So, but personally, like, for Midset coaching, I think it's mostly just draw an example from other games and sports. Like, the tennis thing's been brought up. I know Robin doesn't like it. Midset coaching is like definitely existing in like League of Legends.
No, I like the men's tennis rule, which bans coaching. I don't like the women's tennis rule, which allows coaching.
Oh, what the heck is that different? Are you serious? What do they have?
I don't know why they.
I don't know why they have it.
It's a fairly recent thing too.
I have no rebuttal for that. That's kind of stupid.
Yeah, but I mean, like, obviously we're not saying like this sport does it this way, therefore Melee should do it this way. But when we have problems in Melee, we should look for other places that had this problem and learn from what they valued to make their solution. Doesn't mean like it translates one-to-one, that sport to Melee, but like we should still use that information.
I agree. I don't think we should, directly copy pasta another sport, and that's why, like I'm saying, like right now we're still in a very early like testing period, whether this is a significant advantage or not.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've talked about everything we can talk about there.
Can I mention one thing?
Sure.
I think if you do allow it, the one big thing you have to do is some sort of regulation. I don't think it's necessarily okay that, like, right before your match, you can just grab two people and like have them coach you.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I think that's the one thing. If Midset coaching was allowed, then like Mango and I would adapt to the situation. But I do think it's heavily unfair if it just so happens you found your friend that was nearby you, like during your run of pulls.
Sure. So I gotta get my cord for my laptop. Somebody, Tafo, you want to introduce the rule set changes topics? Talk about like the timers, and I'll be right back.
Oh, we're actually talking about that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Maybe 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So while Sheridan's going out, the next set of topics, since we have a roundtable of TOs here, is timers. Royal Flush experimented with 7 minutes, and it's whether or not we want to go from 8 to 7 or even as low as 6. And then also there's the question of ledge grab limits, which has come up in the past few months. What do you guys think about both of those things?
Ooh, what are we doing first? Ledge grab limits?
I think the quicker of the two would probably be the 8 to 7 or 6 minutes.
Sorry, you cut off. What did you say, Daniel?
8 to. What do you guys think about lowering the timer?
Yeah, I do like that people are experimenting with it because it's not clear whether lowering the timer from 8 to 6 minutes as a whole would help or hurt logistics in terms of like average running time of a match. Like I know Peach Puff Peach Samus, some of these floaty dittos regularly go to 6-7 minutes on their own without anybody actively trying to camp the other person out. So I think it's kind of risky to try to lower it to 6 minutes. 7, I mean, it seemed to work okay at Royal Flush. At this point, I think we should probably just stick to 8 at the big tournaments. But I do like that people are experimenting. I'm open to people doing that and getting data and trying to draw some conclusions.
Yeah, and I think like we don't actually know, like, because so yes, if you move it from 8 to 6, then like matches that would have ordinarily taken like 5.5 minutes, they're probably going to get camped out to 6 minutes. So it's going to make some matches take longer. However, that also means that matches that would have lasted longer than 6 minutes, it cuts those off. So you save between 1 second to 2 minutes on those matches, and nobody really knows like which effect dominates when you put in 6 minutes. But I think like is it like I would kind of feel bad if we had to make this change because of logistical constraints. Like, I feel that's just something that TOs should probably understand how to deal with. Like, I feel like there should be a gameplay reason for changing it from 6 to 8, or from 8 to 6. Like, does changing it from here's the argument that I could see in favor of changing it from 8 to 6, right? So we've got all these matchups that just normally last a long time. Do we really learn anything about who's better in 8 minutes compared to 6 minutes? Like, does that extra 2 minutes like really tell you more about who's the better player? I kind of feel like it really doesn't. Like, especially in matchups like Peach Puff, where it's just like you're just doing neutral game like 100 times. Like, you're not reducing variance there.
I don't really think you are either. I think the big thing about timing actually goes into our next discussion, to be honest. In terms of determining who's going to win, I think in like 99% of the cases, it's going to be the same result. But I do think the timer is more important in determining ledge grab limits more than anything. So the reason why I say that is because I'm going to take a very high, an extreme example here. Let's say the timer was 20 minutes and you implemented a ledge grab limit. The ledge grab limit only activates if it goes to a timeout. Let's say Hungrybox.
That's what Brawl had, right?
Yeah, that's the Brawl ruling. Ledge grab limits only apply if there's a timeout. Like, let's say Hungrybox grabs the ledge 150 times and you still have like 15 minutes to go in the match. Just an extreme example. Like, is the other player gonna really try to like time Hungrybox out for the next 15 minutes? Like, I think, like, let's say Hungrybox grabs it 60 times and there's 5 minutes left versus 3 minutes left. The person with 3 minutes left is a lot more incentivized to try to stall it out if he has like 2 to 3 lives left, as opposed to if he has 5 minutes left.
So what you're saying is, if you think the other player is going to violate the ledge grab limit, it incentivizes you to time them out.
Yeah, because then you have a direct win condition.
But I don't know. I think that's hard because, like, you still have to force them to re-grab the ledge. Like, you still kind of have to play aggressive, and like, if they're ledge grabbing against you, that means you're probably behind. I don't know. I think this is like, I think that is really beside the point. To me, the question about ledge grab limit is, what is the problem that we're trying to fix with this?
I mean, you're trying to force interaction, right? I mean, the main thing here is, like, there's 2 parts to it. It's like, is ledge grab limit such an overpowering strategy that like the meta can't deal with it? I'm absolutely not convinced that's the case. And number 2, do we want to encourage more interaction between the players, right? I mean, there's precedents for this. There's shot clock rule in basketball. Before the shot clock was implemented, it was the game was going. This final score for games was like 17-18 because people were just holding the ball, and that leads to another thing.
Right, for sure.
So
yeah. So go ahead.
So I definitely think ledge grab limits should be implemented. Timer, I think leave it alone, leave it at 8. I think there was a good reason for increasing it to 8 back in the day, and that was, you know, you actually solved the timeout issue because, you know, it's harder to time out someone to 8. And then if you add in the ledge grab limit, then it's even harder to kind of like stall into 8. Melee's unique. It doesn't have like a mechanism like a game like Guilty Gear has. Like if you just stall out too long, it actually penalizes you negatively for that as a built-in in-game mechanic. But you know, Melee doesn't have that. And we've actually, I think, you know, the community has made rulings on other stuff of stalling, like grabs forms of, and that's actually pretty hard to perform too. But at the same time, like I think ledge grab limits definitely need to be in place. Like it does make the match very, very uninteresting, and I think forcing interactions in some ways is, in this case, is for the better of the game.
All right. Yeah, what you said about timers, I think I agree with. Like, personally, I would have liked to have lived in a world where we started with 6 minutes to begin with, and like we had always been playing on 6 minutes. But I kind of feel like in order to justify a move to 6 minutes from 8, like we have to show that there's a problem that needs to be solved. And I kind of feel like we haven't got to that point yet. And as far as ledge grab limits, personally, I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb here, but I think it's embarrassing that our community is even having this discussion, because I have seen literally one game or one set where it looked like a ledge grab limit would have had like any kind of effect. I think all the Hungry Box examples, I think we have empirical evidence that Hungry Box's strategy is actually a losing strategy. Like it's tactically minus, like that is a fact. He does worse when he ledge camps. That doesn't mean he could improve it. Maybe he can, but we haven't shown that to be the case yet. And if it is like, it's a tactical negative, and if it's somehow like a strategic positive, like what Hungry Box has said is that it allows him to like get a read on the opponent or whatever. That means that's something that the opponent can actually react to. They can think about their own strategy and how to combat it. It's not something in the game that's unbeatable. Like to have a ledge grab limit, you have to show me that this strategy is just too good. And like what we have seen, like basically no evidence of that, in my opinion.
To play devil's advocate, one common argument that I do get is that by the time that this meta develops, let's say we have ledge grabbing becoming more popular, and then we have other characters trying to find anti-ledge measures. By the time we figure out a conclusion to whether or not it is OP, it may be too late.
Too late. What happens when it's too late? Like, what does too late look like?
I'm just bringing out a hypothetical here. It could be, let's say, for example, Evo, over half our sets revolve around Jigglypuff planking.
Okay. And why? That's obviously cause for concern. And if that is like the new normal, then yeah, we have to review ledge grab limit. But why would it be too late? Like, what is too late? Too late means like you've crossed some point of no return. So what is that? Like from my perspective, like we recognize that we, establish some criteria where we say, okay, this is a real problem, and then we fix it. And like, we haven't even come close to that yet. And I don't want to, we might in the future, but like, you can't make rules speculating on that. Like what if in 2004, we banned chain grabbing? Like, it seems like there's way more evidence in 2004 that chain grabbing was bannable than there is that we need a ledge grab limit now. So I just feel like this is insanely scrubby to really want a ledge grab limit. I think it's fine to
I
say.
I wouldn't call it like insanely scrubby. I wouldn't like. I'm kind of somewhere in between. I think like it is too early to just go up in arms about some ledge grab limit being necessary. But like I'm also open to people experimenting with that at like Locals Originals as well. I think it's pretty interesting.
So side note, the entire chat, including Leffen himself, Leffen being the one that's actually saying probably one of the most. Leffen's probably the person that's spending one of the most amount of time with experimenting and thinking about this. Do we want him in?
I think we don't have enough time, but I don't know if what do you guys think?
Let's give him like 2 minutes.
Okay.
All right, we'll give him 2 minutes.
I found out the issue is I was defaulting, this Twitch app was defaulting to my desktop webcam, which was like overloading the resources, I guess.
Dude, I don't know why.
Oh, that's cool. I won't shit talk anyone. Good to know.
All right, is Leffen messaging you? It's LFFN. So
Yeah,
Leffen
like
which is Leffen. We were actually using Twitch video chat, so just message the Melee on me, Twitch, and we will get you in. We're not using Skype for anything else.
Oh, he specifically wanted to come on?
Yeah, he actually messaged and said I'd want to come in.
Cool.
So Melee on me.
Great.
Go ahead and message him. On the flip side, I mean, I think while we're waiting for Leffen, I think the big part is that there is a perception of the game, and I know it sounds really scrubby on one end, because if you come from the David Sterling camp, you're like, is it broken enough? If it's not, then you adapt. On the flip side, it's like there is viewership involved too, and I think that's something that Juggleguy
have. But like, what kind of road are we going down if we're like making our rules around viewership? Like, that seems very dangerous to me.
It is dangerous.
And first of all, let me just finish this. Like, it'll only be a problem if it's actually like a viable strategy. And my whole thing is like, it could be a viable strategy, but there's no evidence that there is. We haven't given the metagame like literally any time to respond. And when Hungrybox started doing his ledge camping thing, like Armada figured it out the next tournament. So like, why can we not give this a chance and say, let's wait for the evidence to come in?
I think some people are arguing that as the game evolves and spectatorship, viewership, out of game stuff becomes a factor, that the rule sets have to evolve. That's me playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if it is a problem, it would be silly to like stick to this and like risk the health of the community just to have like some purism in the game. And I acknowledge that.
Right.
But all I'm saying is like.
No, my question is, do you guys see a way like this can be implemented that, like, the ultimate goal is to prevent stalling? Is there a way to kind of like meet in the middle where, ledge grab limits are sort of like kind of like implemented in a hybrid way? So we have a way to prevent stalling, so matches don't drag, but at the same time, kind of have this kind of like not twisting the rules too much. Like how I see it is, it's like this whole entire community, everything is one big ecosystem. Ultimately, the game and also like the integrity of the game is the most important. But however, other parts of the ecosystem, like even the viewers online and the viewers at the event, do hold like a small amount of stake in what this community can grow into in the future.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the viewers are part of the ecosystem, no?
Yes.
Is laughing on?
Hey, he's in the chat.
How do we? What's the easiest way to get him on?
Can you just hit call?
Oh
right.
yeah, he's in.
All right. Big Left, welcome. All right, why don't you just give me your whole opinion on it?
I can't hear.
Or laughing. He doesn't need a visa to be in here, guys. We're welcoming of all nations.
Wait, can you guys hear him? I can't hear him.
I can't hear him.
Okay.
I think the funniest thing was when we used to have. Remember when we were fundraising for Evo, and then Mango got on. Mango got on, and all the other top players who were broke at the time, like, were offering their services to raise money.
During the Spirit Bomb podcast.
It's actually pretty funny.
Dude,
I can't use what some players offered, but it's actually pretty funny if you look in the VODs.
I am ashamed to admit I went to sleep because it ended at 3 a.m. Eastern, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So I had to wake up, check my phone, and just pray for like those 5 seconds before I knew whether we got in or not. At like 8 a.m. But whew.
How could you not be a part of it? I mean, I'm actually
couldn't do it, dude.
I'm mildly disappointed in you, man.
I know. I'm disappointed in myself. I don't blame you.
Poor Left.
Are we giving up on Left in audio?
No.
We haven't bantered in a while. Juggleguy, we're part of Team LASIK now.
I am. Dude, it seems like everyone's getting it. It looks like Ally got it, according to his Twitter.
Yeah, he got it this morning. You got it yesterday?
2 days ago.
2 days ago. Are you almost recovered, like 90% recovered?
Yeah, like I think my eyes are pretty dry still, but it's definitely gotten better every day. So progress. Still using those teardrops that they gave me, but yeah, it's going pretty well.
Do you feel like you're looking for your glasses when you wake up, or do you like?
No, but I feel like when I go to sleep, I really am conscious about taking my contacts off because I can see really well. It's like, wait, I can't go to sleep with my contacts on, but then I have no contacts to take off. So it's like, oh well, okay, that's nice.
What I mean, so there's rule sets. We talked about. Well, we're kind of bantering here. What do you guys think about Frozen Stadium?
No, absolutely not. I feel pretty strongly about this. Like, I'm probably more of a purist, like a melee purist.
Oh wait, I heard laughing.
Oh, okay, we got Leffen.
Yeah.
You're very faint though.
All right, I'm sorry. I don't know.
What's up,
No,
Leffen?
it's good now. It's good now.
All right.
Okay. Wait, let's preface it for the audience. So, I guess kind of give us like a high level like title to what you're going to talk about, and then talk about it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think no one at the top level at least thinks that ledge grabbing or like ledge grab camping is truly like broken. I think it's more of the case that like the answers that come, they have to be so good for Fox or whoever wants to beat the ledge camping that they stop the like degenerate non-interactive gameplay. I think that's more of a reason why you would want a ledge grab limit. Not that it's broken, but that it like promotes degenerate play and boring play. Not only for like the viewership, I hear this being used a lot, but I understand that not a lot of people have been ledge camped. Far more people have been wobbled or chain grabbed. But take this from one of the like 3 people that HBox chooses to camp, that fighting against ledge grab limit, it like makes you not want to play melee. And I don't think that is a good precedent to set if this ever spreads, it will not only be bad for viewers, but I also think it's incredibly degenerate to play against and to watch, and it takes longer for TOs, and like I just don't personally think there is much reason not to ban it, as much as, although I do realize that it is kind of like a, oh, what if we ban this, then we have to ban that. But I personally don't really see that as a valid argument.
Okay, so one thing I would argue is if it's not actually that good, then like in enough time, people will stop doing it because it's just simply a losing strategy.
I hear this too, that like it's not good because you lose percent, but then you also say that like HBox uses it, and he uses it at several majors and tournament after tournament, and I've looked, and I keep saying this, HBox is terrible at ledge camping. He doesn't know how to ledge dash. Puff has a 9-frame invincible ledge dash, and like, you know, like the classic, oh, I'm gonna run up and down tilt that Armada solve ledge camping with. Like, if you ledge dash, you can punish the rest with shield to rest, or just rest right away. Like, HBox is terrible edge camping, and it's still incredibly effective. Even if he is doing it so badly that he's losing percent and continuously taking lasers, it's still incredibly good for the reset and for like, well, I'm not gonna have to press buttons for 5 minutes. Like, no other character has that. And in most sports, taking a 5-minute break would be like, when your opponent's not allowed to take breaks, is usually considered very, very good. And there's a reason why, you know, we don't have infinite timeouts in basketball and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that like you can really say that, oh, he's losing percent, so the strategy's not working. HBox himself like says when he loses to Music, well, I'm going back to the edge. Or like he only starts camping when he's like playing a really, really good opponent. He doesn't camp against Drug Fox, but he camps against me or Armada. And he doesn't camp when getting camped either. I hate that argument, because he camps against Mango even when he's running towards him continuously, and he keeps going like to the edge.
So that's true, and like he could definitely be way better at ledge camping, and maybe that will happen in the future. And maybe like, but it seems like he's the only person that's really doing it.
He's the only puff player.
Yeah, right. So he's the only puff player even close to that level. He's the only one doing it. It just feels like the standard of like the amount of degenerate gameplay, like even if all his sets are degenerate, like I feel like that's not quite, like that doesn't meet the standard of like Melee just in general being too degenerate that we need new rules for. Like,
I'll say like this.
Like, yeah.
You notice how much like game like viewers and stuff like that, and how much are seeing benefits when like Mango or is in the scene. You know, like just like how much, you know, the scene will be helped by PP.
Sure.
Or like let's say I'm not able to compete and stuff like that. I don't think that is something you can just like, oh well, you know, it's not in the game, so we can't think about that. Think about this: if HBox was as good as Armada was the last 6 months, where he never lost a set, do you not think the Melee would? And he ledge camped a significant amount of those portions every time he got close to losing. Do you not think that would have a lasting impact on the game? I'm just like seriously curious, because I think it would. I think that the top players,
I think you're right that it
does affect like the community at large.
Yeah, I think it would have an effect. And I guess the question is like, we just have to find like where the right line is to draw, because what I'm worried about is that like let's say the standard approach to dealing with wobblers is also to play like a really defensive game and, you know, use platform camping to avoid ice climbers as much as possible, because they don't have very good counters. At least they haven't shown any like extremely good counters to platform camping. So like, what if the game versus ice climbers becomes like that, then that also means like we would have to ban wobbling to try to counteract that. Like, do you agree with that? And if it came to that point, would you also ban wobbling?
Wobbling is a lot harder, not only because I think it's actually harder to ban than people realize. Like, you're technically wobbling if you're down throwing with Sheik, but you're pummeling once and then buffering it for. You're down throwing if you're in teams and then you hit a drill and then a shine and then a drill. Like, you ban that guy because he wobbled. Like, ledge grabbing is actually very easy because of the stat in game, and it wouldn't also affect that many people because of the timeout, while still affecting like the top level metagame. I would say with wobbling, it's kind of a difficult question, but I also don't think that like there's nothing that indicates that camping against wobbling is much more successful than going in against wobbling.
Well, yeah,
like
but I mean, Hungrybox did it pretty convincingly against Chew, right?
yeah, but I also think that was honestly because Chew just didn't know what to do against the ledge camping, like even at a basic level. Like I understand that like there's the argument that, like, oh, you guys haven't developed more, but like I've looked into ledge camping. There's no way, no matter how like good of an option you give a character with one double jump, when he's going close to the edge against a character with 5 jumps, and both people are prone to make mistakes, then the risk reward is almost never going to be in the favor of the character with 1 jump that dies if he gets it. Moreover, like for the wobbling thing, I honestly don't think that timing out ICs is that good, because they have such a great upper and great movement, and I think that Chuda generally has shown that he is really bad at handling timeouts. Like if you watch his set versus Music King at Summit, he would keep, you know, like not approaching and keep like full jump fairing on the edge against Peach when he was clearly at a disadvantage, and then he did not approach before it was way too late. I feel like he shows that he doesn't truly know how to deal with like at the basics of you have to approach before it's too late. So why I can't say for sure that I wouldn't ban wobbling. I don't really see that as a problem we have to face right now. I do think that ledge camping is actually a problem like right now, and that's why I'm talking about it right now.
So, Leffen, to kind of recap and summarize how you view the difference is that for to counter ledge camping, it seems like there's one specific strategy that you have to do, but for wobbling, multiple strategies, whether you're aggressive or passive in campy, that both work. Is that the key difference?
Like, just to be clear, I don't think wobbling is the only reason why you would camp ICs in the first place. That's more of what I'm saying too, that like, yeah, they can grab you, but like ICs are just better on the ground, period. It's not like they're only better because they can get a grab, and like it's just harder to ban as well because wobbling, you can, you know, like do the, even most tournaments where wobbling was banned before, most people did the down throw downer and then they blizzard, which is wobbling, and then they, you know, did handoffs and then they did another pummel of it's just really, really hard to ban. And another point I would like to say is that banning ledge, like introducing a ledge grab limit, does not actually nerf ledge grabbing like that significantly. It still works in the I want to take a break capacity. It just doesn't mean I can take a break but not suffer anything from taking a break. Like, you know, I'm probably running out of time eventually if I keep stalling. And even then, if you're just hanging at the edge, you still have to, the Fox or whatever has to force the puff to keep using ledge grabs. So like, even in that, it adds a little bit more interaction because both people have a timer, not just the Fox. Because so it's true that, you know, like very few games have gone to timeout where HBox has had that many grabs. Every single time I spawn and HBox is at the edge, I know there is no point in me waiting. What do I gain from waiting? Because I know I eventually have to approach because he doesn't suffer anything from grabbing at the edge. And that's why most matches end before the ledge grab limit is reached. Because I choose to approach, you know, because I don't see any benefit in not approaching.
I have a question for you, Lef. This is something I brought up earlier with lowering the time. Let's say you're at like 5 minutes left, and you kind of see $100 on $100 because he's the most common example here on the path to going on a ledge grab limit. Are you going to take the rest of the game to just pretty much not approach anymore?
I think it's kind of in the way of like it would add a motivator for HBox to approach in the same way that like laces, you know, like you're not going to lose directly by laces, but it's significantly easier to kill Puff when she feels a need to approach. But like people don't realize how hard it would actually be to time a Jigglypuff out because there's no way you can truly run. You can top platform camp him, but like Jigglypuff still has 5 jumps and like you can't escape on any other stage and maybe Battlefield.
Okay. Go ahead.
No.
So it's more the incentive that $100 kind of has this shot clock in his head. Like he has like 4 minutes remaining, so he's going to have to take riskier actions in neutral to kind of go into your space, and that's where you capitalize.
I don't think many games would go to timeout if like the Fox had the chance to run away for 5 minutes. I don't think that's really achievable. If it like, I think it would be way more viable to like threaten the timeout, I guess, and then actually HBox is gonna go in and like either he wins or kills himself by going in too much.
Okay.
Juggleguy.
What do you recommend, Lepin?
I have not looked at it this far, honestly. I still think it should be the timeout, and I do actually think it would matter, even if it, never actually went to timeout, just because it's the kind of point where like I know when he goes to the edge that he's at least losing, like ledge jump. He's at least expending some kind of resource, regrabbing the edge and wasting time. Whereas right now, even if like I don't have to approach for 5 minutes, by waiting, I'm only losing. I can't get anything from standing on the stage when HBox is on the edge and ahead. I think it would be.
So what I think is, I think that like we don't know what a limit would be at, and one thing I want to bring up is like, let's say we all agree there's a problem. Right? Let's say we all agree that like there's too much degenerate gameplay in Melee and it threatens like the health of our community. I'm not convinced that like the ledge grab limit is actually the best solution. Like maybe it is, but like I feel like we haven't there's probably we haven't thought long enough about other ways to combat this. And I feel like ledge grab limit might not be the best way. So like I would want to spend more time thinking about like maybe even just reducing the timer would be enough.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. We need to take more time and think about it. I never really say that like I had the perfect answer for a ledge grab limit. I think some way of limiting it would probably help us, and I don't think lowering the timer, since it would just put even more pressure on the Fox if he's down. But I do think that there could be potentially some other ways. It's just that the ledge grab limit has kind of been proven to work. Like it was in Brawl, but it was still like it still changed the metagame significantly when it came to timeout matches. And yeah, it's very easy to check. It's just in the options after.
I think Brawl is probably not a fair comparison because Brawl had Meta Knight, which kind of warped the metagame in a way that no other characters warped a metagame in any other Smash game. So I don't know if I'm convinced that it's close. I mean, like, it's close. Jigglypuff, ledge camping, like the frame data on that, I have seen that. It's pretty convincing, honestly. Like it's really tough to beat for like certain characters. Captain Falcon literally just can't beat it. But I don't know if that's enough of a degenerate problem yet.
Yeah, it's definitely the case of like. I mean, just looking at Melee as a very selfish thing, right? If Melee at Evo is, HBox goes to grand finals, so that's like half the top 8 essentially, and like most of the high level matches are ledge camping. What argument do we have over being, over being on Sunday next year? Or what argument do we have to be on being like, for E-League or some other sponsors to pick us up? What argument do we have now that our game, it's old, it doesn't have the, fresh thing that Smash 4 has, and it's now starting to trend downwards? I think that's honestly something that people forget, that like Melee kind of lives on because at this time people still say like, oh, Melee's going to be around in 10 years, 5 years easily. When a new player sits down and like, is it worth starting Melee? Is it worth for me to give 5 years and then maybe the game is dead?
If the pretty game intimidating, right?
Yeah, if it starts trending downwards, then like, no, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't bother. Everyone's just camping more. The TOs are not changing anything. They're just waiting until it's actually dead before they change something. Like,
well, that's why
with considering, even though I don't necessarily think that this is only for ledge grab, I just think in general that we can't be complacent with our plays and our growth, because if it ever starts trending downwards for such an old game with no developer support, it's actually much worse than like a game like Overwatch or Dota that could get a new patch. Order, boost.
Well, this is why between you, PP, and Mango, we give you the most resources to win.
And I think that's a reasonable argument, but I just don't want to make the decision based on like what do the top players and TOs just kind of feel. Like I don't want it to be based on speculation. I want it to be like something that we can actually point to and say this is the reason, and not just like a bunch of people, like what do a bunch of people think.
Well, Sheridan, the entire history of Melee, though, rule sets have been shaped around what we as TOs, players, whoever perceive to be like the best test of skills. I don't think this is that much different than that.
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
really.
so I guess what I'm just saying is like, even if it's what we think, like we still have to have a like framework for it. Like there could be things in the future that we have to make a decision on, and we have to have like a way to make those decisions. Like we can't just keep calling up and looking at whoever's there at the time and getting their opinions. Like we have to have like the way that we talk about, we have to have like a way we get opinions from top leaders, top players, and turn that into a decision. It can't just be like ad hoc every time.
I mean, for me, it's just like, for the TOs, if there's no circuit, if there's no like binding thing, like you have to have this rule set for it. If, you know, you look into the data and you find ledge camping reduces viewership, why would it makes the tournament less fun to watch? Why would the TO himself not be like, what am I going to lose on adding a ledge grab limit? Like maybe some purists of like arguing semantics, like, oh, it's, you know, we shouldn't bother adding another rule or whatever. Like if everyone at the tournament, or the majority of the people, you know, more people go, more people like the game, more people attend your tournament by adding a limit, I think it's going to be very hard to say that like you can change it because we as a community need to have a standard for how we do this, unless there's a circuit or some kind of like governing body that actually like discourages like one man off rule set changes. But then again, like I don't think the Royal Flush 7 minutes or like any of the smaller like time changes, and I do think that ledge grab limit is a relatively small change actually has that big of an impact, unless it's like proven to be successful or like well accepted, then maybe things could move on from there.
Right. I just don't want to, I just really am afraid of getting into a situation where like we find that there's some random thing that could increase viewership 10%, but like it's a really big change to a rule set. Like we have to have some standards for it. Like, you know, what if we saw that banning wobbling would make viewership go up 20%? Like it just feels like there has to be a limit on how much of the game we're willing to change to accommodate like the health of the community. Because at some point, like if you go too far, then you can risk losing the community too, because you just lose the integrity of your rules.
I agree with that, but I also don't think that ledge grabbing is something inherently broken with only Jigglypuff or something like that. Like I actually think that a lot of characters, or like I think Sheik is very, very good at the edge. I think Yoshi's actually very, very good at the edge, although that requires a lot of execution. But regardless, I think that wobbling is just, it's definitely the closest comparison because it's a lot of people whine about it. But at the same time, it's just like, that's a boring character. Ledge grab camping is not Jigglypuff. You can still play Jigglypuff. Like, wobbling is just so core to the character. And I still think that, like, wobbling is just not very degenerate. It, like, you get the grab, and then you get wobble for 5 seconds, and then everything continues on. It's not like ledge grab limit where the entire match could essentially revolve around the edge instead of, like, normal gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we've kind of said everybody's like said their piece.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right. But yeah, thank you for coming on, and I think like this was good.
Yep. All right.
Thanks, Levin.
Thank you, Lef. Damn it! I need to ask him if he wanted to go to dinner. Oh well, I have to do that later.
All right. Do you guys want to talk about the last thing, which is player bans?
Not really, but we'll do it.
All
It's getting kind of late.
it's getting kind of late. Yeah.
I made a video earlier about it, but I guess you want to kind of moderate and kind of lead the direction.
Well,
of
if
this?
you made a video about it, then you're probably in a better position to like guide this convo.
Okay, so I think there's I think one of the fundamental key questions is or one of the key issues we have as a community is not just with the case of the shiz, but like in a case, let's say we have conflict between community members, what do we do about it? We have no centralized system to implement bans and exclusions, right? And furthermore, the other question that we seem to have that comes up is how much does outside the community activity influence whether or not they're allowed to add a tournament within a community event?
Right. So the way that I think about this, there's two things. So first is like you have to ensure the safety of people that are at your tournament to like a reasonable extent. That's the number one thing. And I think like this I don't think this applies to anybody that we know of yet, but like there are some things that are just so egregious that even if we didn't expect that it would actually cause a problem at the tournament, that they would just be banned regardless. But yeah, that's doesn't bear on this current conversation. So I think, okay, good. Yeah, what matters is just like keeping the people that are at your tournament safe. Because like if a TO makes the wrong decision, then they're gonna get blamed for it, right? So that's how I and presumably you approach this topic, Robin. So, I don't know, Tapo, why don't you go through like the points that you made in your video?
So I think the main thing is it's like if a person's already been tried and convicted of whatever and they paid their crime, do they deserve to get something additional on top of that? And that's a main contentious issue, right? And to what extent of the degree of the crime they committed should they be allowed into the community? And so I took the extreme example of, let's say we had the most extreme case. Let's say we had a murderer and a child molester, right? It wasn't within the community, and it happened. Would this person be allowed in our
Well, I think if you're not allowed near a school, then you're not allowed at a tournament. Like I think that's a pretty easy rule, and I don't think it really bears that much on our current situation.
Tapo held nothing back for his first prompt there. That's some heavy stuff.
I'm taking the most extreme example, and then you have the other extreme where you had petty non-violent crime where, I don't know, you failed to pay a parking ticket or you got caught with weed, right? That's the more tame end, right? And in some cases, all arrests and all police records aren't the same. You can get arrested for having drug possession or for being publicly drunk, and you can get arrested for actual violent crime. So, like, needless to say,
so
like,
what matters is, yeah, definitely, and like, just because you've gone to jail, like behind that, we can't just say this person has a criminal record, therefore they're not allowed. Because, like, first of all, like we can't do background checks on people that come to tournaments, right? We're not going to go down.
Not feasible.
That road.
No.
You're going in and out, Sheridan.
Want to do it's just like almost like private information. What matters is like what's your likely behavior at a tournament.
But then how's that? The tough part about that is like that's really subjective.
It is.
But I mean,
so it's like almost. I mean, like almost all of like how we decide to punish people just in society is subjective.
Right. I mean, we have a history in the event. Like you and I know a lot of people through the community over the years. We've known people who've done worse than shiz, like significantly worse than shiz. And, you know, nobody knew about what they did for the most part, and they were allowed in our community, right? So I don't quite...
But maybe you could argue that those were mistakes. like some people would say those were mistakes and we got lucky that they didn't do anything.
Okay. It's fair. And I guess the flip side of it, right, is there's another contentious topic, right? Because in the case of the Shizwiz, he's a little bit more famous than your average pools player. So like if his name comes up, like people are gonna know very quickly that's the Shizwiz. Whereas if we have a random NorCal pools player and they commit a crime and they went on TV, chances are they're a faceless player that it's not gonna be brought up. And on the flip side, like how do you deal with public facing information and things that are relatively private that you could potentially dig into, going back and forth? Because if we're only going to blame things that are public facing that we have to call out on, then you kind of open up this case where if I don't like another person in the community, then if I search enough on Google, then I could potentially find something and bring it out to public. And that's something I don't want to turn the community into.
I don't think TO should be playing judge and jury on these things. And I think it takes a very, very compelling case where there's a direct threat to the safety of attendees to ban somebody. So in general, that's my stance.
Yeah, so maybe we should look at what has been done in the past and see if we can like learn anything from that. Like if any of that stuff applies.
So I think the main things we have two cases. Cases where there was an official ruling that happened where a person was banned from their like local community. And we have cases where a person was publicly shamed for what they did, and it would be really silly for them to come back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The latter case being Genesis 2, where I don't think that person was ever going to come back and show his face in NorCal. And we have cases like Canada with Ryan, where I think he was banned for a year, and then he came back, and everybody was okay with him coming back, and everything worked out. Oh, we also have Leffen. Sorry.
And then also we have from Wii U, from Emo last year.
Yeah, the Mexican Mugen.
Right.
Yeah.
Who did some untoward things towards a girl in the community, and it's got banned for a year. I don't really know what the full extent of that ban was, but I mean it was kind of like a soft ban for a year. But
that was a combination. Okay.
All things that we've talked about so far are like things that people have done to people in the community. And those are a little bit easier because you know that this person represents a threat to this other person in the community or makes them feel extremely uncomfortable and not welcome. And like those are rule because you know that like your attendees are at stake. When you just have somebody who's done violence outside the community, you don't really know if that translates to likely violence at events, right? I think that's the difficult thing we're trying to figure out.
Yeah. So that's like the tough call, right? Because you're making a value judgment, and for a lot of people that on the we should bring back shiz, I just kind of want to play devil's advocate here and not say for shiz, but if you had a person with kind of a criminal record, it's not shiz, and they end up doing something, and from an outsider's perspective, everybody will say to the TOs, like, how the hell did you let this guy into the event, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I don't think people understand who have nothing at stake personally, the liability of an event for something like that to happen. And that's why a lot of us are a little bit more cautious because we have more at stake.
Yeah, and we always have to be aware that like people can learn from their mistakes, right? Like even if they did an extremely bad thing, like people can change, like even if it's over the course of years, and if they have years and years of good behavior showing that they're like a completely different person, then I think we have to consider the possibility that they're ready to come back and they don't represent a threat and they don't make people uncomfortable. So like that being
Prog's
oh
here.
Prague.
What up, Prague? Oh, RIP.
Rip.
It was working earlier, wasn't it, when we were testing? Prague door.
The Prague father.
All right, Prague, you will literally interrupt us the moment you have power to talk.
Yeah. So like, I really think like a lot of these just have to be case by case bases or bases, but we have to have like some general guidelines. So like, I hate to like delve into details and like expose people's past, but like we actually have to look at the specifics of what Shiz did in the past and have some way to figure out like if that represents, you know, possible violence in the community. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, I think so. Like for the most part here, I think it's interesting. So there's like, I've gotten approached privately from a lot of different people in regards to the subject before I got here. I don't know if I want to take this direction, but on the flip side,
The light just kind of went off in here.
what was that? Okay. There is an so for me, I am a suburban, you know, Asian American. So naturally, unless I was exposed to different environments growing up, I think I would have a natural disposition to be more scared of a person like the Shiz. And so there's an underlying tone of if you don't know a person that had a different upbringing or a different culture, that you're naturally going to be more scared about them. So like how much is a fear warranted based on actual crime and behavior versus how much is it just we're not familiar with other people's cultures? That's something that Phil has mentioned before. And that is what a lot of people have brought to me.
Yeah, and that's really hard because like in some sense when somebody says like somebody makes me uncomfortable, like we do have to do some kind of check to see if like their reasons are reasonable, like or not, right? Like you can't say somebody makes me uncomfortable because they're eating a lot of broccoli or something, right? That's not reasonable. And that's why like it brings like the subjectivity into it. And you know, as a TO, I actually really don't like making subjective decisions. I really wish there was like rules for things that I could just point to and absolve myself of responsibility for. You know, I don't even like seeding because you know anything bad goes with seeding, I get blamed for it. So like, I wish there were rules we could point to for this, but it just feels like you get down to it, we have to make subjective valuations of like what people have done and whether it makes people uncomfortable.
It's a judgment call at the end of the day. Like I said, the safety of the attendees at the event is, at the end of the day, that's the TO's responsibility. So,
I mean, I mean, if we're gonna play,
it's hard. It's hard.
We're gonna play test cases, right? What if you know people? You guys are TOs, right? And you guys have to deal with these issues more than I have to. Like, what if people walked up to you and said, "I'm not comfortable with this person at the event"?
It's not enough.
Well, we have to figure out why.
Yep, need more context. And
right.
I think it has to be very, very compelling in order for action to be taken with respect to that tournament.
So case by case, pretty much.
Yeah, I just feel like if you start to get too liberal with the banhammer, you know, with attendees, it gets pretty messy. So I don't think TO should.
And I don't think abused like by like somebody could use it as a weapon.
Yeah. yeah, what happens when, you know, Joe Schmo starts accusing this person of that? Like it gets messy.
Because I got camped in tournament, you know.
Oh, that's
what if
the most compelling reason so far.
She?
What?
Well, okay, what if Mimi, let's change the variables around a little bit. What if Mimi in 2014, let's say Shiz enters an event in 2014 or 2015, the following Evo, and Mimi says, I'm not comfortable with him, with Shiz. Not saying that's the actual case, but I'm just trying to see where your gray is in the white and black.
I think, based on what I understand, like what his and Mimi's interaction was like, in no way you can call it as bad as like what Hugo did. So whatever it is, it has to be less than, and you know, Hugo was a year ban. So I feel like if we're being consistent, that means that like assuming Shiz had good behavior in that year, like a year is long enough to have that be considered, you know, somewhat in the past. Although like if he did something again, then like that would have to come up again.
Did I hear Prague?
That the Prague father.
Did it actually work this time?
Yeah,
Oh
we
yeah.
can hear you.
Oh yeah.
Sick. Okay. So I'm like jumping this conversation probably like halfway after you guys are done with everything. But I guess my thought process has been. Oh, I'm echoing. Cool.
You're good. Not on our end.
Yeah, it's echoing for me. I know why. But I think for everyone that's been, I mean, everyone in this chat basically is a veteran at this point. We've seen many faces of Shiz, and I don't want that to come across wrong. But I know we've all seen, you know, Shiz with the rap, Shiz with church. Shiz has, you know, been a person who is like all of us. You know, we're trying to basically find out what direction we're going in life. And yeah, people mess up. My thought process with all of this has been, if you look at what is on the horizon, it looks like he's going to Evo. If my memory serves me correctly as well, I think there was a Falco-only tournament in New Jersey earlier this year, maybe late last year, hosted by Ladies Love Daniel Logan, and he was invited. And basically, I'm saying that to say that we are fortunate enough to be part of a community that we really don't have many cases of bans and things of that nature. This is fortunately a rare case, but at this point, you know, it's something that we're addressing because, well, he's back in the fray, and he'll be with everyone basically at Evo, it seems. I've been bouncing back and forth on this, and I think I really just want to see what happens with Vegas for a couple of reasons. One, this will be his first major event that he's appeared at, you know, since a lot of this is stirred up, correct?
I think so.
In addition, there's so many people there that he's going to have to, I mean, he's already going to have eyes on him no matter what, because this has been, you know, brought to the surface and all of that. And I think the most important set of eyes are those that are those of the people that he's, I guess, crossed paths with in the past, and things haven't gone swimmingly. I always believe in second chances for a lot of people, but I think the one thing that I do want to see is some sort of, I guess, contrition some acceptance and taking responsibility for what's been done in the past. We've seen the Twitter spats, we've seen it all go down, and of course, there's when it's backed accounts and things of that nature with this case involving other smashers. And I don't think that, from what I've seen, that he's kind of accepted that maybe he messed up in that situation. It's been, I've seen it from my angle, and that's the only angle that counts. If he makes amends with those individuals and he continues to showcase that, he is moving in the right direction, I don't see there being a problem in the future. But the main thing that I think a lot of people are expecting from MIOM in this situation is kind of an across-the-board decision, and I don't think that's something that's plausible. Every TO, it doesn't matter, is going to make their own decision at the end of the day. Mr. Wizard made this decision. He didn't, I don't know if he came to anyone from MIOM, but he made that decision for his event. Plenty of other TOs are going to think, oh, it might be cool having him show up at my event. So at the end of the day, it's all going to be a case-by-case basis. And that's basically my 2 cents for now. I hope that he makes amends with everyone, and I hope that he is moving in the right direction for his own sake and for the sake of, I guess, if he wants to be involved. But again, a big part of it is how he's interacting at these events with these other smashers, and also, what's he doing with the people who he's kind of, I guess, faltered with in the past. So
yeah, I think it is concerning that we haven't seen what you mentioned, the explicit outward contrition, and that's a little troubling. I definitely believe in second chances, especially since he hasn't. I mean, the last time he had a bad interaction with the community was years ago. But we've also heard that he's changed from him once or twice in the past, and it didn't seem to play out. So it just worries me that why is this time different? I want it to be different. But it's just there's a certain amount of he has to show it with his behavior too.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Well,
I want to talk about.
Is that she?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm in an interesting position. I didn't start TOing until after this situation, and the only time, this is the first time I've heard of this guy even. And just based on the stuff I've read, based on Hug's account and the various accounts of other community members, yes, it looks like he's done some stuff in the past. However, I kind of want to take Mr. Wizard's approach to this as well. If you guys read his tweet, he did mention, it's hey, I will let you, come to my tournament. However, if you're anything short of an exemplary citizen, then he'll have him promptly ejected from the venue. All of us here that run events, safety for our attendees is definitely the #1 concern. But at the same time, Robin had mentioned, this kind of ban and presents a certain kind of liability to us at events as well that could cause other consequences that we may or may not be able to predict. And it's hard for us to become the jury to this as well. And I think it's something that we can kind of almost give to event security in a way, because technically if he doesn't do anything at the event itself, it's out of our jurisdiction to kind of eject him almost. If he does something outside to another community member, the community itself can oust them, but I'm not sure on the event level, if he doesn't do anything bad at the events, technically he should be okay, right?
Well, there have been cases with other events and other communities where, for example, there has been incidents at the hotel, and that has led to expulsion from the event. Even off-site, they were in town for the tournament, and they were wearing their badge, and something went wrong, and they were expelled from the event. So I think there was a bit more leeway, but at the same time, I mean, continue.
I think it also depends on the circumstances too. But in terms of like being at the hotel of the event, I kind of consider that at the event itself.
Yeah. And I think what Evo did is a reasonable decision. I don't know if it's the one I would have made, but I think it's reasonable. I'm just glad I'm not the one that has to make that decision, and I could wait until hopefully Genesis 5 to make that decision. And I think by that time, like, the evidence will be in.
Yeah, I think that's the good part. Like, I'm actually very thankful about that too, because I was stewing around for it, and I don't understand the situation as good as any of you guys do, because I wasn't around for that for the case. So definitely, I want to see, you know, how his behavior is at Evo, and I'm pretty sure, given his colorful past, a lot of people will have, you know, shiz in their sights. And also, like, you know, a lot of judgment's going to be passed, you know, this time around on his behavior. And I think for other people that, you know, have similar past, this kind of like vigilance towards them should be expected, and I don't think that's unfair. And like Mr. Wizard did mention, you know, if they're short of, like, they have to be at a higher standard than your average tournament attendee. Like, they can't even be like, maybe like,
that's certainly true.
They can't just, you know, be your average, you know, tournament attendee. They can't even get salty, probably. Like, they have to be
salty, like, but depends on how they express it.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, they literally had to be at the top of their behavior.
Right. All right, Blur. Can we get Blur on? We're never gonna hear that.
It's like inevitable.
Sounds like a horrible idea.
Whether it's the Scarring Toph show, the reads, commentators curse, or mailing it on me, Blur has this nebulous overarching presence.
Yes.
That'd be so funny if Blur did not know how to use the Twitch chat.
Oh god.
It's like,
my fucking computer will not power up correctly.
He was talking about how cool this, how great this app was.
Dude, it's so much better than Skype. I hate Skype.
Why does Skype use up like 70% of my video memory? Or CPU?
And like 50% of the Skype app is the screen. Like, there's so much clutter on it. It makes me nauseous. All right, I think we have him.
Dude, can we make a universal Smash claim to say that if you use Skype, you're banned from the community? Can we make that motion?
Sure.
I have a lot to say about Skype, but I can't say in this video.
Like, if you have to use Skype to interact with a person, you're banned from the community for incompetence.
Sounds good, Tapo.
I don't get it.
Well, while we're here making motions.
Do you like Skype, Robin?
No, I don't like Skype.
I'm making motions because, like, my power cord for my laptop is like, I have to jiggle it to get it to power my computer.
What's Blur coming on for? Aren't we done?
Who knows? Blur is just, you know, Blur needs to be a man about town.
Free Leffen. Hey, surprisingly, this ended before 10. Like, I'm actually impressed.
Before 10? Do you know what
When
time
Blur-
it is?
Yeah. It looks like 12:40 to me, Daniel. Get out of here.
If this is West Coasted on me, this is not Midwest or East Coasted on me. The people have spoken.
Blur was like, when Blur first came in the chat, he was like, isn't this great? I love this. I love this. This is people getting together and figuring out our community. And then something triggered him, and it all changed. I got to figure out what that was. Not that I respect Blur's opinion, just as a matter of curiosity.
Probably the controller mods thing. Like
Oh,
Hey, Nick.
God.
Nick, can they still hear us? Okay. I won't say it then.
I think
Alright.
you asked this before, else funny things could happen.
All right, no webcam blur, but hopefully audio.
Can we just put like an image of Blur as his camera? Like whatever we perceive Blur to look like, we'll use that as his image.
Yes, exactly.
Did I hear something?
Does this thing work? Am I live?
Yeah.
You guys can hear me?
yeah.
All right,
What's up,
Blur, what do
Scrub?
you want?
I had to set this whole thing up right now. I'm in my new apartment.
Well,
How's your
that's
dad?
what you get for being the worst player in this call chat.
No. I'm actually am.
No.
I've never seen Sheep play, but I will bet he's probably better than Blur.
So
Oh god.
I'm happy that we had this little experiment to show everyone in the world just how lost you guys would be without me. Is this what the show looks like? Is this what Melee Leadership looks like with the blurs not on? Is this really what got accomplished? I can't name a single thing, and I don't even watch the show.
So,
Well, there you have it.
You can't name a single thing because you didn't watch the show. Sounds
That's
pretty
exactly-
open and shut to me.
That's exactly why I can't name a thing, but I bet I couldn't even if I did.
I don't know.
I couldn't
think
even if I did.
I think we came to a pretty clear agreement on controller mods. I think we came to a pretty good agreement on coaching.
Oh, really? You guys came to a clear opinion on coaching, something that 99% of people are against.
Yeah,
Real comments
I was
from the
gonna
guys?
say, like, I don't think the coaching thing warranted a discussion. It's just
all right. Well, that was a gimme. But
an accomplishment here.
I think we did pretty good on the controller mods.
All right. Okay. I don't think you did, but
You
I
don't
thought
know
you
shit.
weren't listening.
I wasn't. But I bet you did a bad job.
No, we
Anyway.
actually came to an agreement, and this included Dan Salvato and Typo.
All right. Tough. All right. Anyway, here's what I want to get.
I want you to acknowledge that and then move on.
God. I don't even know what decision you made. What was the decision?
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not too happy with what the consensus was. I tuned
nice.
in right
Nice,
at
so
the
there
end of
isn't
that.
a consensus.
Yeah.
Juggleguy.
No, I wasn't part of it. I was late.
Juggleguy
I
wasn't
was not part of the controller mod thing. But yeah,
What agreement that came up if Juggleguy, one of the biggest heroes in the country, doesn't even like where it went?
I don't know.
I mean, are we ever gonna find a solution that's perfect? Like, that's not a reasonable standard.
Okay,
for it, and I think you know
Sheridan,
that.
let me show you some leadership. Let me tell you what we need to do. All right?
Oh my
Let me show you
God.
some of this. So here is what the community genuinely needs to do, and I got to be honest with you. All right. First, you gotta let the boy lead, the Crimson Blur, and we got to make what I like to call a competition committee. I've told you guys this before, but we're gonna do it. People who don't want to make it, be a part of it, can get on out. But I think the people who have experience making rule sets and have done so in the past, I'm looking at you, Sheridan. I'm looking at you, Rob.
First thing, ban wobbling.
All right, Rob, you'll get a vote. I think it should be like a committee of like 5 people who have an open conversation. But you know what? Not so open that it's freaking live streamed. You guys are worried about everything you say. As much as
I'm not worried about shit.
I appreciate the wholesome memes in the chat, but you guys can't even talk and have an open conversation because you're on freaking webcam. Don't know how everything's gonna be criticized. Can't ask an honest question without being like, "Wow, Sheridan didn't know about this." Like, how about we have a real conversation? How about that? How about we do that? Okay. And what we do is at Evo. Here's what I'm gonna show up to a room at Evo. I'm gonna put a time down. I'm gonna invite 4 of you and say, "Come to this room. We're gonna make a rule set." Okay. And what I think should be done is I'd prefer we start conservative, and then any changes that are brought forward by anyone that wants to. Let's say Typo says, I want a new thing to be added to the rule set. What he has to do, and this is like to even be able to present to the committee, you come in with a red line. So here's the rule set. It's kind of conservative, but whatever. But here's what you want. You want Arduinos allowed, and here's the Arduino you want. You show up to a tournament or something, or maybe it's through, you have a Skype call with them, whatever. You show us exactly, literally give us a modified rule set that shows us word for word what changes you want. If you can't make a modification to the rule set, you shouldn't expect that from us, right? So you come in with your new rule set, and you come in, if you have new hardware, if in the case of controllers, you give us a play test of that, and then we start making decisions. But right now, we're acting like we can make decisions on Arduinos when none of you guys have even played with them or even play tested them. Are you guys serious right now? Is that
Yes.
we're gonna make a long-term decision on controllers when half this stuff is untested? Doesn't make any sense.
I think
Like,
it makes
if you
sense.
hosted a
And I
tour-
can explain it to you. I'm prepared to defend my reasoning.
All right, Sheridan, you talked enough. I'm gonna keep talking. So, so that is literally the process that should be done, and then gradually we go towards a more liberal rule set if necessary, and people are able to make decisions on it, and reasoning is given. Shows like this is where you make a decision for the community, you give a recommendation, and then you move on. The reason why all of us are struggling to move unilaterally on these sort of issues is because we actually have integrity. And I appreciate you guys for that, because I do think you guys have integrity. And
Speak for yourself, dude.
So Blur, I'm your friend. We've gone through a lot together. But I honestly have a harder time wondering if a Trump tweet or your last rant had more productivity to maybe
let me tell you something. You're going to be tired of winning. You're going to be tired of winning. We're going to win so much.
Like what you described is like pretty much the implicit philosophy that all of us have already like used in having this discussion. Like I think literally everybody was like, let's start conservative, but let's make sure to recognize what problems are, and let's make sure to keep tabs on them, and let's make sure we have a way to decide when these things become a problem, and then let's make a rule change based on that.
Fantastic, Sharon.
So,
do you have a rule set for me that you're going to put out as a recommended rule set?
What have you done?
You haven't done nothing. You got nothing. You got nothing. You got words. I don't like words.
We got. See, Blur, listen.
All right.
It'd be irresponsible for me to write down a rule set right now, because we have to be able to have time to let everybody else's arguments percolate in our minds.
Just percolate.
Right?
Yeah.
Percolate.
Just let another year pass without us doing anything. Let's percolate on this.
Hey, where have you been? Who organized this call? You know what? If nothing else, this call triggered you to actually do something. When was the last time you made any rule sets, Blur? You've been getting us together to make rule sets.
Let me say this. Let me say, really, Sheridan? Every time I say, hey, guys, let's get together.
You are a parasite feeding on Alien on these amazing 2K viewer counts.
Oh my God. Okay, let me tell you something. Chad, I'm gonna give you some honest truth. If I wanted to, I could go tomorrow and write the Blur recommended rule set and do what all the Smash 4 kids did, my predecessors did. That's what's been done in the past. If you want to know how every rule set in Smash history has been made, it's one dude makes a rule set. He gets people to sign it as co-signers and says, yes, this is the rule set. Everyone who disagrees doesn't sign it. But guess what? It doesn't matter. They put the rule set out on Twitter, wherever, Facebook, whoever, and they say, this is our recommended rule set. And then they pass that shit like it's good, right? They don't have a real discussion. They just do it, right? I think
it's not like discussions haven't informed it.
Oh, sure. But in reality, I could literally point to every rule set and be like, oh, that is this person's rule set. That is this person's rule set. And I think that unilateral movement like that is irresponsible, and I want better for the Smash community. That's the honest truth. I want a little bit better. And here's the truth. Every time I say to the few people I respect to make rule sets, hey, let's do it, Nintendo tells me, nah, dude, just wait, let it happen. Sheridan, you're telling me we can't do unilateral movements. Rob, you haven't been showing up. I want you guys.
I will write the rule set myself. The
You
first
won't do
line will be Wobbling's banned.
Fine, you'll have a vote. You'll have a vote. Let me tell you this. We need to get people at Evo. I'm going to make a meeting. You guys show up or don't show up. You will be replaced by a replacement. We'll have fake Juggleguy if Juggleguy doesn't show up.
Fake
There's
Juggleguy
gonna be a
will also
time.
want Wobbling to be banned.
Fake Juggleguy will also want Wobbly to be banned.
I'll
Whatever.
make sure of it.
We'll put Gamero in if Juggleguy doesn't come in. So think about that for a second, Juggleguy. Do you want that? Okay. There's gonna be a room. We're gonna draft this thing up, right? Gonna put it out there. Say, hey guys, this is a thing. Doesn't mean that it's, you know, the final thing. But if you want to make a change to it, give us a proposal with a red line, and tell us exactly what you want changed. Tell us what exactly in words what you want changed, with no actual with no gray areas. Not like, hey, I think blank should be bland as a tweet. I don't want a tweet. I want, give me exactly word for word what needs to be changed. And that is exactly what needs to happen. Other things that we discussed in terms of player bans that you guys were meandering around saying we're not going to do anything. We need to have code of conduct, exact code of conduct. And there needs to be some certain standards and third parties who look at it. There are a lot of good services that do that. Any key comes to mind. We need to open up an email, which it lets people, like people who have been, who are victims, be able to email, do an anonymous email and report threats and report incidences to trusted people. They shouldn't have to go to Twitter. They shouldn't have to go to Reddit in order to talk to someone. There should be a hotline basically to be able to talk about it, and that should be monitored. For people who have done things in the past, of course, there needs to be an even-keeled approach. And yes, a decision does have to be made, preferably by a third party, not by people who are biased by it. Those people, you know, try to make the best decision. And in some cases, you know, you think of solutions like, okay, you're banned from global play, but you're allowed in local play for a certain period of time, and then you're allowed letters of recommendation that allow you to reassimilate back in the community. Things like that. There are medium solutions. Anywho.
So things like what Canada did already, and we already seen in practice.
Exactly, right? So good ideas, right? Anyways, code of conduct, that needs to be a part of a rule set, and then an actual third party.
The first to bring this up though, like we wanted to have a TO summit at Evo 2013. So it's like we want this stuff to happen, but I mean.
Well, Sheridan, let me tell you something. Sheridan, if you want it to happen, you show up to my Facebook invite at Evo. If you want it to happen, you show up to that room. If you're not there, I'm tweeting it out, and the whole world knows.
I'm going to bed.
I just ridiculous. Blur, when you say this is ridiculous, you're also criticizing your past self. I hope you realize this.
Sheridan, I don't care. I don't care what you think about me. Sheridan, I don't care what you think about me. I want you to show up at Evo and
everybody already knows that the things you pointed out are problems. You don't get to.
I want you to put your best
by
sweats
blustering
on.
about it.
Sheridan, put your best sweats on. Show up at Evo. I'm gonna give you
your best sweats. Oh my god, that's great.
Show up there. We're gonna make a rule set, and it's gonna go out. That's all that's gonna happen. It's not gonna be unilateral. We could have done this unilaterally. It's not gonna be unilateral. It's gonna be a group effort, and we're all gonna move along. That's what's gonna happen. Everyone agree?
I'm down.
All right. God damn.
Sure.
I'll be there.
And coaching.
That's easy. Why is coaching still a thing at any Smash?
It shouldn't be. Any self-respecting TO. If I was a player and I saw that, I would just DQ myself. It's that bad. In my opinion, I'm that absolutist about it. Coaching is literally terrible. Hashtag ban coaching. If you let Matt.Z bad coaching to shine, we're not on speaking terms anymore.
That's.
Just kidding. I still love you. I still love you, but no coaching.
All right. We'll see.
God. All right. I'm happy something was done. You're welcome.
Would you like?
All right.
Aaron, would you like some water?
We did more than you did tonight.
No, I literally did more than everything. Oh my god. You know what? Bye. I'm so happy I didn't have to sit for 2 hours of this. 2 hours
you
of this
just
to get
said
some resolution.
You just You restated what every TO has already said, been saying for the last 4 years. And you just come in and you make it, you put the little blur spin on it, and you make yourself look like a cool guy. And maybe you are a cool guy, and maybe I'm not a cool guy, but
all right, you know
I just don't want you to have the credit. That's really just the raw
I understand
behind it.
I respect that, Sheridan.
I understand you have a lot of insecurity about this, Sheridan. We're gonna leave it be for now. I want you to show up at Evo, blur out. You guys are beautiful people. I thought it was very cute what you guys did. It's adorable, and continue keeping on. Smash Brothers forever. Bye-bye.
What are we gonna do about that man blur?
I don't know. Gotta get a.
I guess I'm showing up at Evo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm showing up Evo as well.
And Juggleguy's coming with his wobbling band vote.
I will start putting out bribes for the wobbling band vote ASAP. It's gonna happen.
You know, it's kind of what's strangely funny. Wobbling was banned until like Evo.
That's funny, Tapo.
I know wobbling was that's the standard, dude. That's the standard.
No.
Yes, it was.
Wobbling,
go back to 2011.
Like,
go back to Smash Boards. Go to all 5 majors in 2011. Like 4 of the 5, I swear to God, banned wobbling as recently as 2011. I think it's 2012.
In your little irrelevant corner.
Okay. Okay.
Here on the West Coast.
I remember wobbling was banned already before, because refresh us again. Why'd you unban it?
Wobbling was never banned on the West Coast. The correct coast of Melee.
That's not true.
Yes, that is true.
I'm gonna look at. Okay, it's gonna take a while. I'm gonna have to sit through Smash Boards for a while, but I will find you some West Coast tournaments. I would like to see some NorCal tournaments.
You will find, but it was never the standard. It was never the standard. The only major tournament I can remember on the West Coast that banned wobbling was like one Winter Game Fest.
All right,
Aside from that, maybe it's
I gotta get some food.
All right, I'm sorry, it's 1 o'clock for you.
Well, I'm on West Coast right now, so it's technically 10, but.
Oh wait, what?
I'm in LA.
Oh.
For a week. Get dinner with me.
Yeah.
Please?
Cool.
Yeah. Are you here on Monday?
All right. Yep.
All right, we'll grab dinner on Monday.
All right. Take care.
All right, good night, man.
Okay. Thanks, G. Okay, outro. Thanks, everybody. Blur, you're a bastard, but I love you anyway.
He'd make the perfect middle manager.
Get that man some therapy. Go home, Blur, if you're drunk.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. You can fuck with me at Sharadactyls on Twitter. I'll be happy to have a civil conversation with you since I'm such a nice guy. Tafokints, what do you got?
Go watch Mango, Cloud9. That's all.
Saturday.
Juggleguy.
Saturday. Big House registration opens. Be on the lookout. You'll get a free shirt on Saturday. Only on Saturday, though.
All right. Cool.
That's all I got.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Good night.